At this time, I'd like to call the 3 o'clock session of the March 1st, 2016 Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Can we please have a roll call?
Ms. Bomke?
Here.
Mr. Cavalier?
Here.
Mrs. Maurer?
Here.
Mr. Milday? Here. Ms. Sellers?
Here.
Mr. Snellings?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of statements to read. It's been a pretty rough 2 weeks. We lost a truly remarkable lady on February 19th, Miss Donna Cody, who was the former director of the Central Rappahannock Regional Library. She started working for the library in 1971 and served as director from 1981 to 2015. The incredible success and expansion of the library during that time is directly related to her leadership and vision. During her tenure, the library went from 2 locations to 8 newly constructed or newly renovated branches in Stafford, Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, and Westmoreland counties. The card catalog system evolved into the web-based catalog that is used today. It's known throughout the state as a robust online portal, and it was established for the customers. And the staff has grown to more than 350 people over her tenure. Ms. Cody also used her position to advance libraries across the state, as well as our local system in the General Assembly. The board is very appreciative of the gifts she gave to our area in helping to establish our wonderful library system, and our thoughts and prayers go to her family, friends, and her coworkers. The next individual is very special to many people in the community. Ryan Mott was a 3rd grader at Grafton Village Elementary. He touched many lives in a short time here on earth, many more than most people do in a lifetime. Ryan passed away recently after a long and courageous battle with a very rare form of brain cancer. Ryan's struggle became the community's struggle, and his loss is sorely felt. Stafford County government came to know Ryan when he said he wanted a kitty cat to snuggle, and the shelter gave him a kitten and everything he needed to take care of it. A few weeks ago, he and his family came to the shelter, and they picked out his new friend. The staff said the cat immediately began to love on Ryan and fell asleep in his arms. The board and the entire community wishes to extend our deepest condolences to Ryan's family and the entire community. We would also like to offer our condolences and our support to our neighbors to the north in Prince William County. On Saturday, 28-year-old officer Ashley Gwendon responded to a domestic disturbance call on her first shift as a Prince William County police officer, and she was shot and killed. Officer Gwendon was a Marine Corps Reserve veteran and a double-degree college graduate in aeronautics and forensics. In addition, 2 of her fellow officers, David McEwen and Jesse Hempin, were also injured. Every day, police officers everywhere go out to work to keep us safe, and they never know what they will face, but they do it because they have a strong calling to serve. We appreciate the service of Officers Gwendon, McEwen, and Hempin, and public safety officers everywhere for their boundless courage, valor, and sacrifice. We have offered our full support to Prince William County, as well as our prayers and thoughts to the families, friends, and co-workers of these 3 officers. At this time, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Bruce Benson, our school superintendent, to the podium.
Thank you, Chairman Thomas. Vice Chair Sellers, members of the board, Mr. Romanello, appreciate the opportunity to share some additional information with the board supervisors this afternoon regarding things going on in the school system. I have some information I want to share related to our ongoing dialogue that might be relevant to some of the items that the board has on its agenda for this afternoon. One of the things that we've talked about on a number of occasions is our changing demographic, and I think it's always important to try and quantify whenever we can when we're talking about changes in student population or how we're doing in terms of student achievement or any other area, most probably. So I've included in your packet this afternoon some things that are changing with regard to our student population in our schools. The first chart in here represents the number of students that we have on the autism spectrum, and it continues to increase. We are projecting it to continue to increase into next year. and our responsibility to help our young people that are somewhere on that spectrum, and the kinds of classroom spaces and staffing ratios that we need in order to be able to do that are represented not only in the work that we're doing with staffing standards in the division, but also how we're thinking about program design. In a like manner, I've included a chart that shows the increase in the number of students that can participate in our free and reduced lunch, which also continues to grow. And then finally, our English language learner population and the increases that we're seeing there, particularly in the last few years. It has implications not only for the manner in which we work with students, but also with the number of adults that we have in our school spaces that are interacting with our young people in any number of ways. So, excuse me, changing demographic, which also reinforces the notion that one size seldom fits all, and that there's a need to be able to differentiate in terms of instructional experiences for kids to ensure that we get the best possible outcome for everyone. And that's something that I had an opportunity to observe last week in our visit to Moncure Elementary. I had an opportunity to go to a number of classrooms and look to see what does teaching and learning look like when we're working with a diverse student population. And one thing that's very clear is that the traditional model, which is not really traditional anymore, but it might seem traditional to some folks, is where you might have a teacher working with 25 to 30 students in a classroom space where everybody's doing the same thing at the same time, is not really what teaching and learning looks like in most of our instructional spaces today, particularly at the elementary level. There's a need to be able to work with small groups. In order to individualize instruction, we typically have more than one adult, perhaps in the room at a time. There might be a math specialist or reading specialist involved. There are times when we're pulling students out of the classroom spaces and working with them in small groups, and we do that now. We do that within the context of a hallway or another space within the building. The kind of work that we're asking our kids to do, we want them, of course, to work collaboratively, to have an opportunity to engage in more inquiry in the classroom, more hands-on, are all things that we should take into consideration as we look at design moving forward. And I say that because our current elementary design specs are almost 20 years old, and our student population is changing. I believe strongly that the direction that we should head with design should respond to the changing needs of our students and the manner in which we work with them. So I've included my most recent blog post for you all to take a look at your leisure. It's posted on our webpage as well about those visits at Moncure. Really incredible work going on with our young people, very, very individualized, and working in and out of all kinds of small groups. And speaking of our elementary design specs, I want to kind of reinforce where the additional square footage is in that increase. I know that there was some speculation related to some information that was shared at a planning meeting regarding the potential for parking buses or having fueling located on the site. Let me just say emphatically, that is not going to happen, okay? And also that those potential costs were not incorporated into the the cost estimate for the construction. Okay, so where are those increases? Because there are increases there. There are support for special education, additional support for resource teachers. A number of our schools have created sensory rooms for our students that are on the autism spectrum to spend some time in when need be, or to get prepared for a lesson. Unfortunately, what folks are typically doing is they're taking some other space in the building and converting it into a space in order to meet those needs. The addition of pre-K classrooms, creating a makerspace. Most of the board members have had an opportunity to see that makerspace that's adjacent to the library at Brook Point. We have similar kinds of efforts going on in elementary and middle schools across the division. The manner in which we do it, though, is typically to take a regular classroom and convert it into that space. And then collaborative space for our folks to work with small groups or to bring groups of students together from multiple classrooms adjacent to the regular classroom space, all of which is already happening in our schools. It's just that we're taking spaces that were really not designed to do that and converting them in order to support those efforts. So, on one level, it probably kind of makes sense to plan ahead for those spaces to be used that way versus taking a space that was designed to do something else and converting it, which essentially reduces the overall capacity of the school because we've changed the program essentially that's being supported there. The final area that is a part of the new elementary ed spec is the change in the gymnasium space, which is an increase in square footage, but it's also a change in the functionality as well, to include a kitchenette in that area, as well as a bathroom that would have exterior access to allow the space to function as a community area, as opposed to just a place to have athletic contests. So for the board's consideration a little bit later this afternoon. And then finally, I've talked a little bit on a number of occasions about our focus on all sensory skills. There's some movement in our General Assembly that's kind of very exciting and very much aligned with the efforts that we have underway here in Stafford. There are two bills, House Bill 895 and Senate Bill 336, that if passed, and it looks like there's a very good possibility that there will be some compromise there and that will move forward, would require Virginia to establish a portrait of a graduate and a focus on 5 C's, which are the same 5 C's that we have been focusing on since last summer. We had a group of administrators and teachers come together last summer to talk about, well, what does it mean to be a graduate of Stafford County Public Schools and what would we expect our graduates to be able to do. They identified communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and citizenship as 5 really important things that our students should take away beyond success on standardized test. I think it's really interesting that those are the same 5 C's that folks in Richmond are considering as a part of what would be required of all graduates in the Commonwealth, beginning potentially with the 9th grade class of 2018. We added wellness because we think that's important. In addition to our 5 C's. So with that, I'd be happy to respond to any questions that the board might have this afternoon.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll have presentations by the public. Anyone wishing to address the board will have an opportunity to do so. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. When the green line starts, that means you have 3 minutes. The red light or yellow light is 1 minute, and the red light means your time has expired. I do have a couple of speaker cards. The first is Mr. David Vita, and after that will be Ms. Donna McCarran.
Good afternoon, distinguished members of the Board of Supervisors. I'm David Vita. I'm actually a teacher at Moncure Elementary School. I put my address as 75 Moncure Lane. I'm a resident of Spotsylvania, but I teach here and have a vested interest. I just wanted to make some comments from a boots-on-the-ground perspective for the new Moncure Elementary. There's a lot of different perspectives, and I know this just is part of the puzzle pieces. Regard to the arts and the space and music classrooms, and this kind of speaks to space elsewhere in the school, we have, right now, I'm sure for many years the classroom was adequate, but I'm living in a situation now in the classroom where I've got very limited storage capacity. The storage that we do have, it not only does it gets in the way, and I do what I can with it, but it also poses a challenge too, even for just making sure it's set up well for our emergency drills and things like that. Now, I assure you, we overcome that, but it would be awesome if we actually had the same storage capacity and sorting that some of the newer classrooms have. With the advent of C5W and all sensory skills, a lot of technology is also being pulled into the project-based learning in the music room. We just recently had a STEM initiative by our principal, Mr. Mackey, where along with performing with hand drums in the classroom and singing and dancing and xylophone and everything else, we brought in MacBooks and we did project-based learning with the students where we coded on the Sonic Pi synthesizer, which was a software-based system, and the students learned code. Now, to do that, you have to have space for project-based learning. You can't have students in each other's face. It's very constrained in the room, and even if we looked at the current model in some of our newer schools, while it's certainly a step forward from what I live with, it still doesn't afford that extra space, which also comes into play when we use the music classroom for other purposes when we have community events. While I'm mostly the one that uses it, I'm not the only one. Along with that, movement has become a bigger and bigger deal in education. There's plenty of research to prove that a movement and the times of day when students move and them having dynamic movement and learning to express themselves physically is important. And in the setup that we use in music, oh, you got a yellow light. We have to have instruments and singing and movement all together, and we don't have that. One of the last things I want to mention is that differentiation in general takes capacity. If we're going to have 980 students in the school, that means that by quality standards, we're going to have another music teacher come in. When that music teacher comes in, they will be teaching probably on a cart somewhere else in the building, but they will have to go into a space that's already going to have other specialists and reading specialists and special education, everything like that. And even somebody like an itinerant art teacher, if they don't have the sinks in the right place and stuff, they can't even do watercolors somewhere else in the building because they won't even have anywhere to wash off the brushes. So I'm speaking to capacity. I've been on 2 transition teams for major moves in the Marine Corps, one for manpower and resources that moved on to Quantico from headquarters of the Pentagon, one for the West Coast recruiting headquarters called the 12th Marine Corps District. Anyone that deals with computers and networks know that if you plan for the capacity that you need rather than what you will need, it's not going to work.
Thank you, Mr. B.
Thank you.
Next is Ms. McCarran, and after that will be Ms. Anna Killian.
Good afternoon. My name is Donna McCarran, and I'm a Stafford resident. I reside at 7 Shawnee Way in Stafford. I'm also a special education teacher at Moncure Elementary School. The students that I work with are students with learning disabilities or another health impairment. And I came here today to be an advocate for my students. Since we are building this new building that's going to have a larger enrollment, the population of special needs students is also going to be larger. And it would be a shame to build a new building that doesn't have adequate and appropriate space for all special education and services and programs. Moncure is a school that supports inclusion, and inclusion learning environment is appropriate for students with special needs some of the time. However, there are many times that students need to be pulled out into a smaller setting or into small group, and this would be for them to have a quieter setting with less distractions, and that would be where you would do direct instruction on the students' ability levels, small group testing, and learning activities that comply with their IEPs and accommodations. As students with special needs grow older, they become more aware that they're not learning at the same rate as their peers and become more self-conscious and embarrassed, and at times will shut down in a large group. So we need small instructional spaces outside of the general education classes to support these students and to let them learn away from their peers. Having adequate and appropriate space is essential to all students, and I hope that you all will be supportive of a new Moncure that has appropriate and accessible space for all students.
Thank you very much. Next is Ms. Anna Killian, and after that will be Ms. Tammy Torino.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Anna Killian, and I'm the president of the Annie Moncure Elementary PTO and a resident of the Aquia District at 309 Destroyer Cove. I have a daughter currently at Moncure, and I have twins that will be starting kindergarten at the new Moncure. I am here on this gorgeous afternoon to urge you to accept the elementary design specifications as approved by the school board. I know that in the past few weeks you have learned that the Moncure rebuild project has increased in cost. Well, I'd like to give you some insight about why that space has increased. The cost is so vital to the new Moncure. Let's face facts. The learners today are much different than the learners of years past. We have programs in place to support autism education, emotional behavior support, pre-kindergarten, and other learning support programs, in addition to the mainstream learners that have different learning needs. Space is not a luxury anymore. It is an absolute necessity. In 2018, the second phase of the redistricting effort that started last year will go into effect. That will bring the Moncure population to 912 students. That's 96% of the allotted space for the new Moncure. The redistricting change will not only include classroom space for the new population, but resource support such as behavioral support, ESL, focus, math intervention, reading intervention, and special education. Days of sitting in the classroom and listening to a teacher drone on ad nauseum are gone. Children today need to be the leaders of tomorrow, which requires an investment in space for STEM education, large group education, small group education, and everything in between. We need more outlets, water, storage, and a technology infrastructure that will support learning today and learning through the next 40 years. Yes, the next 40 years, because this space, this school, is not only going to need to meet the needs of the children in 2018, but for generations to come. We are responsible for providing a building that can be adapted, changed, and supportive of teachers and children for decades to come. So you think that an extra $4 million is too much to spend now? What about $4 million over 40 years? What about $4 million over 50 years? Our decisions today will impact the decisions that need to be made in the future. I don't make a habit of speaking in front of strangers. In fact, this is the first time that I've been before your board to voice my opinion. However, I feel that our decisions regarding the new Moncure must not be made with a narrow vision. What did you want to be when you grew up? What if your school allowed you to experiment, design things, and encourage your growth? That is what we can provide the children today and the children of tomorrow. Please lend your support and your vote to providing a modern, flexible, accommodating space by accepting the elementary design specifications as proposed.
Thank you, Ms. Killian. Next is Ms. Tammy Torino.
All good elementary teachers come with a visual. So I made a visual for you. I'm Tammy Torino.
Can I get you to state your name and address into the microphone just for the record, please?
Tammy Torino, 24 Tavern Road, Stafford County. Please don't let that get out. The kids think I live at 7.
Thank you.
So this is my visual. And just in case I get a red light, because my school thinks I can't talk in just 3 minutes, I have some notes there for you. So I just want to talk to you about why we need space. And like everybody has said before, we have a different population that we're educating today. And I want you to keep in mind that you're talking about an elementary school. And that's very different than a middle school or a high school. Elementary children are 6 to 12, 6 to 11, 12. And they need to move. They need space. They're still children. I think all too often we try to push them in a box and make them sit in a desk when they're not really supposed to sit in a desk. They're supposed to be at home climbing trees. But that's the struggle that we have in elementary school, is letting them be children and letting them grow and develop the way that they're supposed to, and then also giving them a really great education. So I just was also on the committee that was the C5W cohort that kind of decided what we wanted Stafford County students to do when they graduated, or to be when they graduated. And amazing that the state is now jumping on board with us. We must be brilliant. So those things are really, really important. That is what we work on every day in elementary schools. And I just wanted to give you a visual of what a classroom looks like. This is an actual third grade classroom at Moncure. As the reading specialist, my job is to look at data. So I have quadried our students for you. And you can see that this population right here is significantly below where they should be in third grade. By the way, did you know that they build prisons based on third grade reading scores? That's why I picked this to show you. It's very important. This is the, we're really worried about these kids. They're not quite on grade level, but they're making progress population. This population is the on grade level, and these are our bluebirds that are flying high. And in this classroom, as you can see, we have 6 ESL students ranging in different levels. And please don't assume that this guy right here or this guy right here is the same level. They're very different. And sometimes this guy right here is the most limited in language. So that's really important to keep in mind. This is furniture. All the brown things are furniture. And I didn't include things like lunch boxes and where we hang our coats. But this shows you how crowded a classroom is with just kids and desks. And then we have our special ed population. In our particular third grade, we have 11 special ed students that we serve across the third grade. This is one class, and I did not include them. We have 27 students in this classroom. So what I want you to know is if we're going to really create these students who collaborate and communicate and we're teaching them citizenship, we need space to do that. It's very important that we have these spaces where we can sometimes pull kids in small groups, sometimes challenge them in large groups. I've taught on stages and I've taught in closets. This is my 31st year as an educator, and I've been to 14 different schools in my military life as a wife of a military spouse. And I'm here to tell you that I've seen really, really good schools and I've seen some that weren't so good. And I challenge you to build a really, really good school for the future of Stafford County. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's anybody else on my right that would like to address the board, please come forward. Again, name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Greg Mack. I'm the principal of Moncure Elementary School, and I also live at 19 Burns Road in the Garrisonville District. I'm here today, again, Principal Moncure. I'm also part of the new Moncure Executive Steering Committee. I've been a part of the process leading up to where we are so far. The collaborative learning spaces, I want to talk about that a little bit. That is really critical to our learners. Research has shown that only 5% of our learners are audible learners, a lot different than the day of the Charlie Brown, whenever they're talking to all the kids lined up in the classrooms. With that is a lot more of the authentic, hands-on, inquiry-based learning that needs to take place, and that doesn't always fit within a classroom, as Mr. Cavalier would experience even last week. 12% of our students in our schools, on average, are special education these days. What that means is when we're running a school for 950 kids, we can expect to have at least 150 kids who will require special education services. Sometimes they can be given services in the classroom. Sometimes we need to pull them out in order to help them out for distraction reasons as well. So we need to plan for that. Now, in Moncure itself, the school is being designed to consider autism, emotional behavior support, learning support, small inclusive pull-out and special ed resource classrooms, pre-kindergarten, and some of these could have multiple. There could be up to 6 different programs within the school. That can also inflate some of those numbers for that 115 kids, and they don't all fit exactly into one little kid in a classroom. So those collaborative spaces are really important because they would be available for those resource teachers, for the classroom teachers, the paraprofessionals, to be able to move the kids around. One of the big issues with the rectangular schools, I've taught in 2 of the schools, or worked in 3 schools in Stafford County. I've worked in a rectangular building we've built several times. And one of the biggest difficulties in that building is moving the kids throughout the building. It's not a quick walk from one side to the other. And so whenever you're trying to provide extra reading or math resources for the kids, or ESL or focus, there's always that long walk. And that's the argument for collaborative spaces. You don't have that. Did a little bit of math, just thinking if most time for the walk, it's about 5 minutes to and from. If you do that 5 minutes every day, it's 25 minutes a week, or over 16 hours in a school year. I think it doesn't matter, but it does add up. And if you do it for math and reading, you're talking about a week of school used in transition. So the collaborative spaces allows it to stay close, and really it helps out with the instruction. The populations that would definitely use those areas would be the ESL focus instruction, math and reading, for whether it's remediation or enrichment for the kids. And again, special education, it can be close by. We can help them and get them back as fast as possible, opening up to allow for the kids to have different experiential learning experiences. We talked about a little bit before, I believe Anna mentioned, with the redistricting. And with the redistricting, we'll give extra challenges to Moncure. Not only will our population jump up to be almost near capacity, really the whole northeastern part of the county is going to be near capacity anyways with that redistricting. Sorry, I've gone over 2 seconds longer. But we will expect it to be a Title I school. We're expected to have over 250 ESL kids. That is stuff, they come with extra resources, math, reading, ESL teachers, paras, and we need the extra space for them. So thank you. I'll leave this with you as well.
Anyone else on the right? Okay, anyone on the left? Okay. Next, we will have committee reports by board members.
Ms. Sellers?
Thank you, ma'am. Kind of a busy couple of weeks. We had cybersecurity town hall last week. A couple of us attended. I thought it was pretty interesting. Just kind of an update, and they had folks from the state and the federal government, as well as locally. Subventions was there, just kind of talking about the landscape in cybersecurity world today. Also attended on Friday the Anthony Burns marker unveiling, where 2 of our students came and spoke, and I thought that was a really great experience for them. They did a great job. It was windy and cold, and but a very good experience again for them and for us. And for those who don't know, Anthony Burns is kind of a local hero. We have a very deep-rooted history here in Stafford County with particularly the Underground Railroad and the abolitionist movement. And if any of you have not been to see the Trail to Freedom that the NAACP and the county hosts every couple of years, I definitely suggest you go out. And Anthony Burns is just another way to commemorate that. Also attended a Fuse meeting, which Fuse is a frequent users of our services here in the region. And what we're looking at there is it's kind of out of this homeless subgroup on GWRC, but we're looking and trying to identify folks within the community who are using our jails, our hospitals, and then our services. And so we're trying to get them identified within the community and put them on the path to using less services, but the appropriate services. So we're saving some money. And this time, that's all I have.
Mr. Snellings?
I'll defer.
Ms. Baumke?
Yes, just to follow on with some of Ms. Sellers' comments. I too went to the Anthony Burns unveiling, and that was wonderful. It was wonderful. And the kids, that was kind of the highlight with the children. And of course, one of my favorites, Mr. Frank White, Dave White's father, who's sitting in the audience, was there. Always good to see your dad. And also at the cyber event, I just wanted to mention that it is unbelievable what the government knows about all of us. And all I can tell you is if I still had my children at home, it would be very limited what I allow them to do on Facebook and on tweeting and everything. It's just, how do I say this? You can't be, and I don't like the word strict, but you can't be cautious enough. And wow, we have a lot to do in cyber, but we're making great progress. GWRC, I'm on that commission now, and I just wanted to mention that because we've had some conversations on our board about the refugee population. I remember 10 years ago when a lot of the refugees came here, and we were very concerned about a lot of the resources that they required in the classroom. And apparently we haven't had the refugees to that extent like we had 8 to 10 years ago that really need all of those resources. So there was a woman that came and spoke to us at GWRC. So I thought that was interesting, and they're trying to be very careful about where they place the refugees and what kind of an impact it has on the individual communities and the schools. So that was very good. And I would just like to thank Empower House, Kathy Anderson. It was actually Ms. Sellers' idea in light of the loss of this unbelievable police officer in Prince William. Empower House brought up these purple ribbons today, and we will get more for the school board and your staff. 1 out of every 4 women are subjected to domestic violence. That's a very high statistic. So not to be doom and gloom, but I just wanted to bring that out again. Thank you.
Mr. Cavalier?
I actually got a list of things that I did this time. It was a busy last 2 weeks. My very first R board meeting, that was different, so I'll get to experience life at the dump here. I went to another Fredericksburg Regional Alliance meeting, which is our regional economic development group. I had a meeting at the Jeff Rouse Women's Sports Center about the pool design and some other things. Went with Dr. Benson and Ms. Hazard and Ms. Fallon. All 3 of you were there at the Ann Moncure Elementary School visit. We were there for a good 3 hours, I think. It was very interesting and eye-opening, and I'll talk about that a little bit more whenever the issue comes up on the design. Did the Cyber Town Hall meeting with others here, as well as the Anthony Burns marker. And last night I went to Aquia Harbor Property Owners Association board meeting, And then, last but not least, I do want to give a little update on the committee for the Jeff Rouse Women's Sports Center, the criteria that we're going to use for our Wall of Fame people that we want to install there. That was Ms. Baumke, Ms. Sellers, and I. And staff was Kathy Volbrick and Anthony joined us. And we hashed around some things and came to good consensus. And that was good because I think what we want to do is keep this opening of the new facility all positive. And so I think we were all in agreement, and I just like to be the spokesman for the group and give you a little idea of what we did. Or do we have this on the agenda later? It is on the agenda? Well, I'll save that report for then. All right? I won't bore you twice. Thank you.
Mrs. Mauer.
Well, it appears we've all had busy weeks over the last 2 weeks. First, on the Legislative Committee, the proffer bill has passed, and we were able to mitigate some of the effects of the proffer bill. Most importantly is the liquidated damages aspect of it, and I really want to thank Mark Dudenheffer, our delegate in the 2nd District, for leading the charge on that effort. The Community and Economic Development Committee will be reviewing our proffer guidelines and how this proffer bill has, because it will have an impact on our proffer guidelines as we currently have them. So expect that to come out within the next 3 to 6 months. I also attended the Virginia Cybersecurity Commission meeting that was previous to the Cyber Town Hall, where they discussed the Virginia Cyber Range. This is very exciting for the Commonwealth, and hopefully, we'll see some movement. In addition to that, I had several meetings with relation to the Stafford Tech and Research Park, and it looks like we have movement on that front as well. And very excited about where we are from a community and economic development perspective. Also, want to congratulate Sheetz on their successful grand opening. We attended that. There were several of my colleagues there. And that's exciting for the Rock Hill District because my family was there last night. And it was still packed, and people are milling about, and so it's a wonderful addition to our community. In addition to that, they employed more than 30 people here in the Stafford area, which is also very exciting. Last but not least, the Telecommunications Commission is currently negotiating their cable agreement with Comcast. One of the efforts from the Legislative Committee was to increase the density as far as providing service. So I will be attending some meetings with the Telecommunications Commission in relation to those efforts and the negotiation of the cable agreement. And I do have one final thing, and I want to thank Keith Dayton and Anthony Toyugo once again. We are looking at the Lake Arrowhead Dam situation. We hope to have a plan that to move forward in evaluating what's going on with the Lake Arrowhead Dam. They have worked tirelessly with a number of our other departments to gather all the documents dating back to 1987. This has not been easy, but we have good news on the horizon for 4 courts in there, and we hope to be moving forward and getting those paved and brought into the VDOT system. So I want to thank everybody who was involved in that. It's been a wonderful team effort. Thank you.
Mr. Milday.
Thanks. Yes, the last couple of weeks I attended along with many of the others in this dais, behind the dais, the R board meeting. Thanks, Jack, and miss you, Gary. I know you miss it. Oh, yeah. And the Annie Moncure meeting, that was pretty amazing stuff. And of course, a lot of us were at the HH Pool Hot Lanes. Almost everyone at Hot Lanes presentation from VDOT. We had a VRE meeting. And of course a FAMPO meeting. And earlier today, the Infrastructure Committee had a extra long meeting, met a little early and had a full house, and I'm not going to go through all the items, although the dam was one of them, but we had 9 items, and that agenda is available online if you want to see it. So thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Thomas.
great thing about going last is everybody's already mentioned everything. I had the opportunity to go with the superintendent to Ferry Farm. It was actually kind of neat because we went into a kindergarten class. It was the first time that they had this new program where they're taking laptops into the classroom, and they're actually all tied to the teacher's laptop, and it's very individualized. And it was kind of neat seeing the kindergartners try to figure out the Chromebook and not sure how to scroll around. And we were in the back of the room talking about, well, maybe they need touch books but I'll tell you what, 30 minutes later, they had it all figured out. So they just saved us lots of money. It was a really neat opportunity to see that. And it's cutting edge stuff they're doing there. I know there's a couple other elementary schools that are doing something very similar. Threads back to everything that Dr. Benson talked about earlier. The VRE meeting, I think one of the important things that came out of there is we've been trying to figure out what the financial plan is for the next 30 years because it's very hard. There's a lot of, if you make one small change to fares, that affects the ridership and the costs and all that stuff. So one of the things the VRE's been working on really hard over the last several months with staff help here is working on a financial plan. We did forward that on to the PRTC, so if anybody's interested in seeing it, let me know and I can get you some details, and PRTC will be taking it up shortly. The other thing, we had a mayors and chairs meeting. We had the mayor of Fredericksburg and Port Royal, and then the chair of Stafford County, Spotsylvania County, and King George. It was kind of a neat meeting. I think Gary kind of started that up last year, and we're going to try to continue that just to, at a very high level, see if there's ways we can't make sure we're coordinating across multiple departments and lines there. And the last thing was Ms. Baumke and I had a town hall meeting. It started at, I think, 7 p.m., and we had a lot of people there. It actually was a really good turnout. But we wanted to both thank the amount of staff that was there. They stayed well past 9 o'clock. People were very interested. I can assure you that we could not have answered all the questions that we did that night. We'd have had to get back to a lot of people. So for those staff members who took time out of their evening to come out, we really appreciate that. Okay, next we'll have report of the county attorney.
I'll defer, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Next we'll have Scott Majowski, who's our Commissioner of the Revenue, come forward and talk about the 2016 reassessment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Welcome, Ms. Maurer. This presentation may seem very familiar to most of you. Pretty much all that's changed are the numbers. So I will breeze through this and feel free to stop me with any questions you may have. Reassessment, I believe I discussed this slide in December when I was here talking about the reassessment process. So I'll just hit some of the highlights of this slide. We are required in the Virginia Constitution to assess property at 100% fair market value, which is a rather unique requirement. We're one of the only states that require that. The reassessment is effective January 1, 2016. Those values will hold for 2 years since we're on a 2-year cycle. So the next reassessment will be January 1, 2018. Virginia is a truth in taxation state, which is why we calculate the effective rate for you all, which I believe will be part of the county administrator's presentation. Code only requires us to have 15 days worth of hearings when we send out reassessment notices. We sent out notices on February 18th. We've been holding hearings since then, plan on holding them throughout the month of March. But even after March, if people come in, we're not going to turn anybody away. A lot of folks don't understand why we have to reassess property at 100% fair market value. Other than it being in the Constitution, there are real consequences to it if we don't. The state actually comes in and audits our results. They will review sales that occurred and compare them to our assessments, and if on average we drop below 70%, then there's a couple items of state funding that can be reduced. Our state corporation commission funding, which are our public utilities, that is also based on our ratio, so the more accurate we are, the more money we get from the public service corporations. And if there are large inequities in the assessments, a court or the Board of Equalization can overturn the entire reassessment. We have two charges. One is to assess property equally and to assess it at fair market value. The courts have said that if you can't arrive at fair market value, it's more important to assess it equally, so you're not discriminating against anyone. So the purpose of the reassessment is to equally distribute the tax burden, to fairly distribute the tax burden. Those are two very different things. Oh, sorry about that. I'm gonna quit watching the Democratic debates, I think. And what I mean by that is the real estate market. Folks talk about the market as if it's one big giant market. It's not. It's a number of sub-markets, and you'll see in some later slides. Sometimes commercial property is hot, other times residential property is hot. It goes up and down. If you don't have a reassessment, then you can't reflect those changes in the market, and therefore you can't adjust people's tax bills accordingly. The purpose of the reassessment is not to generate revenue. I don't raise taxes. You guys do with the tax rate, so. Okay, so here's some of the results of our reassessment. Residential properties went up on average 7%, commercial 6%, agricultural went down -1%, which looks very strange. That doesn't mean that the value of the agricultural properties has dropped, because it hasn't. We've seen a lot of property coming out of agricultural, getting developed, and is now moved into the residential portion there. So the values of the agricultural property are increasing. There's just fewer parcels that are considered agricultural. And it's important to note that agricultural heading, that is not based upon our zoning. That's based upon a state category. 10 acres and above is considered agricultural. That's how we have to report it to the state, so that's what that number reflects. Multifamily, it's a small number, so it doesn't take much to move a small number, but we are seeing a lot of multifamily being built, so that's up 25%. If you exclude new construction, then our base, the average house went up about 5%. Interesting enough, each reassessment has something unique to it that we kind of discover after the fact. And one of the things we learned about this one, the average assessed value of a new home in Stafford County is $431,000, which is a huge number. Just to put that in comparison, the average value of an assessed house in Stafford is around $280,000, $283,000. So we're building some very large and expensive houses here in Stafford. Composition of the tax base, lots of folks want to talk about this. It's important to note that I don't believe that this is a fair way to measure the strength of your commercial properties, but a lot of folks do. 18% of our tax base is commercial property, 82% is residential. What makes up commercial and residential? Residential is a combination of obviously residential and also the agricultural figure that we had on the other slide. Commercial property is made up of commercial and multifamily. Multifamily is considered to be commercial. When you add those two numbers together, our total tax base now is just a hair under $16 billion. This is one of my favorite slides. Just shows you the growth, the changing dynamic of our tax base composition. You can see in 2006, when at the height of the real estate market, our commercial tax base was only 12%. We were still growing commercially at a pretty good number. However, the value of the residential property so far outpaced it that it caused that number to drop and skewed it dramatically, which is why it's not a fair representation to measure the strength of your commercial tax base. In order to do that, and I believe you all have seen the spreadsheet, we have a spreadsheet that encompasses all business taxes. This is just a fraction. This is a piece of the puzzle. It is not the puzzle. For the first time, we're over $3 billion in the value of our commercial property. So we're growing at a healthy clip in terms of commercial, but we also are in terms of residential at a much faster pace. So we might see in the future that number tick down, below 17 or maybe even 16% of commercial. It's not a cause for alarm, just a function of the market. Take a look back at our tax bases. As I said, we're at $15.9 billion, which is the highest we've been since 2008. At the peak of the market, we were at about $18 billion, so we have not recovered all of the value that we have lost, but we're definitely trending upwards. Here's a timetable. As I mentioned, we mailed notices on the 18th. So far, we've only received 39 formal appeals, which we're very happy about. We're able to take care of a lot of folks' concerns on the phone. A lot of folks just want to know how the process works, so we're able to take care of some of that before folks come in and talk to us. The deadline to file appeals is March 10th, but again, we don't turn anybody away. Once we finish our appeals in March, then we'll wait for you guys to set the tax rate. Once you set the tax rate, we'll take all of those values, we'll calculate them by the rate, that will create the bill file, which we'll hand to the treasurer, and that's what the treasurer uses to print the tax bills. Tax bills, they like to send out by June 5th to give folks a full 30 days to pay. It's customary. It's the way we've always done it around here. So we get very antsy if we don't give folks those 30 days. And believe it or not, the phones start ringing and people want to know where their tax bills are. That, I believe, is all I had for my presentation. You all know how to get a hold of me, but in case you didn't, here's my contact information. Feel free to call me. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we will have the report of the county administrator. I believe there's a little report he is anxious to give us.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Anthony Romanello, County Administrator. We may want to dispense with one point of business, Mr. Chairman, which is to delete item number 20. We'll have that back at your next board meeting when the application comes in. That was an approved appointment to the Embry Mill Community Development Authority. That's the only change that I have to today's agenda. If you want to just approve the agenda.
You want us to do that now? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so looking for an approval of the agenda minus number 20, which will come off the consent and not be considered when we get to that point.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Tally the votes. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am excited to present this budget to you today. So excited I cut myself shaving this morning 3 times, as you can see. No makeup. This is part of my responsibilities in accord with Section 15.2-407E of the Code of Virginia. And as we work on any budget, we start with the board's priorities for our community, the 6 priorities, and as we work through the presentation today, we'll see how each of our expenditures falls under one of these categories. We also follow our principles of responsible and accountable government. The board's very familiar with these. These talk about the board's financial policies, maintaining a structurally balanced budget, maintaining and enhancing sound fiscal management, fully funding our pension liability and all of our reserves, estimating revenues conservatively, and reporting on our progress to the board and to the public on at least a monthly basis. Here's some past themes of budget presentations that we've given to the board over the last few years. 2011, we serve people with people. 2012, using innovations to serve a growing community. 2013, we were cultivating a great community. 2014, we were making progress on priorities. 2015, we were building on our strengths. And last year, we were sharpening our focus. And you may remember a particularly compelling suitcase that helped me make the presentation. It was such a great list of themes, we wanted to make sure that this year's was especially good. So we came up with many options, and here's 10 that didn't make the cut. Top 10 worst budget theme ideas for FY17. Number 10, Celebrate Stafford 353. Number 9, it was the best of times and the worst of times. Number 8, Taking Care of Business. Number 7, we're so good we don't need a theme. Number 6, Gathering Nuts and Berries. Number 5, this might fit in with yesterday. One small step for our organization, one giant leap for our community. Number 4, Covering Our Assets. Number 3, Bearing Fruit. Number two, this was our CFO's idea. I'm going to give credit. Normally I'll give, but this one was the CFO's idea. Not sure where she went to school, but we'll see. Cheese is milk's leap toward immortality. And the number one worst budget theme idea for FY17. If Bruce Benson were here 5 years ago, we would have had a better theme. Great communities are not accidental. They are the sum of engaged citizens, responsive elected officials, and high-performing public servants. This budget proposal builds on the board's priorities for our community as well as on the momentum of recent accomplishments, and it positions our county for another year of achievement. In addition, this budget takes good care of those who take care of the people of Stafford by providing raises and market adjustments for our teachers, deputies, firefighters, bus drivers, building inspectors, paraprofessionals, social workers, and all members of Team Stafford who serve our community daily. Our theme this year is making great things happen. What a difference a year makes. Looking back, what our community didn't have just a year ago and what we have today. We have a AAA bond rating, which we didn't have a year ago. We have a dog park at Duff Green, which we didn't have a year ago. We crossed the 40,000 job mark, and we finished the Mountain View and Poplar Road safety projects. Oh, wait a minute. We crossed the 41,000 job mark and growing. We finished Centerport Parkway, connecting it to Raymouth Church Road. This was the first road project in the history of the county building roads, so it's nice to have that one completely finished. And obviously last fall, we opened the new Stafford High School. The Woodstream Trail opened last fall, and you're beginning to see throughout the community our trailblazing signs highlighting county attractions throughout Stafford. Here's the additional funds in the budget. For fiscal 2017, they total $22.9 million, and they come from four main sources. Number one is savings in the school baseline. Number two is other funds identified by Stafford County Public Schools. Number three is the state funding increase for public education. And number four is county revenue growth. And we'll speak in detail to all of these as we go through the presentation. Here's the uses of additional funds. Again, I'll get into to more detail. You can see that $15.3 million of the new funds go towards public education, $6.3 million goes to county agencies, and $1.3 million goes to our partner agencies that we work with throughout our community. I think this chart illustrates very well that the Board of Supervisors and our county's commitment to public education is alive and well, as the lion's share of new funding is going to public education in Stafford County. Here's how the revenue stacks up. On the county side, $8.4 million in new money, principally real estate and personal property. You heard the commissioner's presentation just a while ago. This again is built on the effective tax rate, so it's growth in property values. Consumption taxes, sales tax, and meals tax continue to be very strong. Development fees certainly holding their own. The new construction growth is about 2.1%, and our FY17 budget assumes 2% growth next year because taxes are on a calendar year basis, the budget's on a fiscal year basis, and the effective rate following the reassessment. I mentioned personal property and consumption taxes and development fees. We also have $285,000 this year as a payment from the city of Fredericksburg for our partnership on our public safety radio system, so that's additional revenue to Stafford County. Now I'll go priority by priority, beginning with fiscal responsibility and reducing the tax burden. Our recommendation is to lower the real estate tax rate. It is 101.9, or almost $1.02 to 99 cents. This is the effective rate, as the commissioner mentioned just a few minutes ago. The average residential bill since 2014, which was our last reassessment, the bill in 2016 will be $28 less than the average bill in 2014 on an inflation-adjusted basis. There are no other tax or fee changes. This budget does include continued progress towards our enhanced bond rating. We're in full compliance with our financial policies. Our debt capacity, which we presented to the board just a couple of months ago, is lowered by about $9 million from $327 to $318. Debt service will be more affordable in future years. It continues to rise, but not at the rate that it had, while still allowing for a robust capital program. Cash capital moves to 2.75% of the budget, which we would reach our 3% goal by fiscal 2018, and lots of good progress that I'll talk about throughout the presentation with our friends in Stafford County Public Schools. Have to put the SVI in here. We continue to remain the lowest cost per capita, and you'll see as we go through the presentation that we also have our non-public safety staffing remains less than it was a decade ago. Again, this is comparing expenditures to our benchmark localities. Here's some areas where we were able to save money or to enact some efficiencies throughout the last year. Our utilities department renegotiated with one of our manufacturers to save $110,000. The Parks Department offers virtual tours of county parks and facilities, saving both county staff as well as the public time as they're thinking about renting or visiting one of our facilities. Just to show you that we don't leave any stone unturned, we negotiated a new contract for our copy machine and citizens assistance that saved $500. Treasurer Laura Rudy and her team implemented the My Stafford Citizen Portal, which won an award that the board presented just a few months ago. Public Works has been working to drive down our stormwater costs by retrofitting 2 stormwater management facilities and dividing up the bids to save a couple $100,000. After we had a substantial flood about a year ago down at the Port of Falmouth, several county agencies teamed up to do the cleanup there, saving what would have cost $150,000 if we had contracted it out. And after 25 years of getting our money's worth of the asphalt that was laid just outside this building, we replaced it, which added 100 new spaces and also made the parking a lot more accessible for folks who may have trouble getting into any one of our buildings and the county courthouse. The shared services study was done about a year ago, made a number of recommendations. We're moving forward this year in 4 key areas. Health insurance, will be briefing both boards at the joint work session on March 15th about our joint RFP with health insurance. We'll be instituting a pilot project with Stafford County Public Schools for the County Parks Department to do grounds maintenance at 4 elementary schools. Hopefully we can grow that. One of our new positions that's proposed in the budget will be a contracts administrator, which will be shared by the school system and county government, as well as now using one auditor and saving money by doing that. Turning to public safety, the budget does include a down payment on the board's adopted public safety staffing plan. We're recommending the addition of 15 firefighters for the county's fire and rescue department, and in the sheriff's department, 4 new positions and 1 conversion. One would be a major that Sheriff Decatur has requested 3 deputies, and the conversion of the public information officer from part-time to full-time. Cash capital for sheriff's vehicles and fire and rescue ambulances is fully funded, and we also have funded debt service for fire and rescue apparatus as well as the county's radio system upgrade. This is a new initiative this year that's been requested by the county's General District and Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court. The Circuit Court clerk and her team are county employees. The General District Court and the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court are state employees, but they're all absolutely integral to our public safety team. And the Commonwealth's attorney and the sheriff have written letters endorsing this arrangement. There had severe turnover in both of the lower courts clerk's office, severely hampering their ability to do their job. They have made some operating budget reductions. We do support them with operating budget, even though their staff is county funded, and they have asked the Board of Supervisors to consider a salary supplement, which is a net cost increase of about $50,000 to help them address some of their very serious turnover. The judges, the sheriff, and the Commonwealth's attorney have all endorsed that, and we'll be giving you copies of their letters supporting that. Turning to public education. I've been in public service, local government for 24 years. I've been in Stafford County for 12. I get to say something today I have never been able to say before, and that is this proposed budget fully funds the superintendent's request. First time in 24 years I've ever been able to say that. We're including $144.6 million for public education out of the county budget. That's an increase of $845,000. This, combined with funding from the state. We'll fully fund the request that Dr. Benson provided to the school board, and we're using the more conservative of the two numbers. The Senate budget provides less money for public education than the House budget. We've assumed the Senate budget is the one that goes when they get to conference. If there's more money, then that would be on top of this. So we've assumed the lesser of the two. This provides nearly 70 new positions, including 36 teachers, a 2% salary increase for school employees, as well as drawdown of state incentive funds for any of their proposals. Market-based scale and salary adjustments that Dr. Benson has spoken to this board about. The final year, thank goodness, of the VRS 5 and 5. We will have that implemented and can move on. There is an increase in the VRS contribution rates for teachers across the state, as well as covering debt service, bus replacements, and textbooks. One of the aspects that is a serious part of the county budget and does lead to our support of education is through the Office of Human Services and the Children Services Act. Our private day school placements continue to be a budget challenge for us, rising from $1.8 million in fiscal 10 to $3.5 million. That's an estimate for the current year. We've been able to hold the line in FY17 on the Human Services Office budget because we have some reductions in other areas outside of private day. We are funding our continued partnership with Stafford County Public Schools on the public day school that we operate at Drew Middle and Stafford High School, which continues to be a leader in serving some of our most needy children in the community, and we look forward to expanding that effort as the opportunity arises. Turning to the next priority, economic development. The Stafford Opportunity Fund is fully funded. We're making great progress in executing the board's adopted economic development strategic plan. We're also funding the Germanna Stafford County Public Schools Central Rappahannock Regional Library Partnership that the board authorized late last year. This will provide for larger space for Germanna Community College. This is their Germanna 2.0. It's not Germanna 3.0, which would be their permanent site, but this would be a larger temporary site, and also with the partnership with Stafford Schools providing an early college for our high school students, as well as a third library in the county. It also fully funds the FRA, or the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance. I mentioned the Economic Development Strategic Plan and the great progress we're making in that area. As you know, this directs efforts to expand business growth and create jobs throughout the county, as well as to enhance our retail and restaurant offerings, which are not just economic development, but as we're told by residents throughout the county, they're part of quality of life, not just bringing in revenue. Directs collaborative work that accelerates infrastructure upgrades throughout the county. We're making great progress in our redevelopment areas, and as Mrs. Maurer said just a few minutes ago, we are making some progress with the Stafford Tech and Research Park, and we'll have a further brief on that at the board's March 15th meeting. We're making great strides in enhancing our development review processes and making permitting just as efficient as it can be, and of course with the effective tax rate, keeping taxes low. More than 50 metrics are now being tracked toward our economic development progress. Next priority is service excellence. We have in the budget a 2% salary increase effective July 1 for county employees. This mirrors the proposal that Dr. Benson gave the school board, as does the market adjustments that we would like to do phased in over 2 years, FY17 and FY18. I'll talk about that in just a minute. We're also working with the schools on a fiscally responsible and competitive health insurance package. More details to come at the March 15th joint work session. We are proposing 5 new full-time positions, non-public safety in the general fund, and 2 conversions from part-time to full-time in the Planning and Zoning, Finance, Commonwealth's Attorney, Treasurer's Office, Social Services, Clerk of the Court, and in Human Resources. In fiscal 16, the current fiscal year, we budgeted $1.1 million in vacancy savings. That was one of the ways that we closed the gap. That's taken a toll on the workforce, as we've had to use managed attrition to close the gap. And so our proposal is to reduce that from $1.1 million to $500,000 with the current budget, which is a number that reflects normal attrition over the course of the fiscal year, so it should not have an impact on productivity. One of the reasons that we're taking a deep dive into our compensation is to see the increase in turnover. As you see, the increase in turnover over the last couple of years, in particular in public safety ranks, which spiked up last year nearly 14% between sheriff and fire and rescue, and about 11% with our non-public safety positions. We continue to do exit interviews to try to gather all the information we can about why folks are leaving. Some of this is certainly reflective of the changing nature of work, that people aren't staying in jobs as long as they used to, but clearly 14% is certainly an alarming rate for us, and one that we want to try to bring down. Here's our chart that shows non-public safety staffing over the last decade. You can see that it peaked in 2009 at 401 people, and what we're proposing would be to set that at 343 in fiscal 2017. Again, still substantially less than what it was 10 years ago. The bars on that chart show our population growth over that same time period. Last year, we had a consultant come in who did a compensation study. We were able to move a number of employees up to minimum with a little bit of money. Last year, we also moved the pay scale up 2% with the COLA that was provided last year. Phase 2 implementation is what we're proposing with this budget. We think we'll be able to get about halfway there. With the recent turnover, we are asking our consultant to take a second look at fire and rescue and our competitiveness with our peer localities. We don't have that data just yet. We will anticipate having it during the budget process. We have a placeholder in the budget of $900,000 for market adjustments. We think that will get us halfway there, and then we'll get the other half done next fiscal year. Even during the recession and throughout today, we continue to invest in Team Stafford to make sure that we're providing the best possible workplace opportunity for county employees so that they can continue to grow and develop in their positions through Best University, our Leadership Institute with the University of Virginia, which is a 2-year program. The lead also at UVA, ongoing supervisor management training, customer service training, classes in all kinds of technology. Our employee picnic was particularly fun. You'll see the picture there at the bottom right. Our annual service awards, these are things that board members are good enough to participate in and from time to time hurt county employees while they're playing games. All in good fun, right? And you can see up top that Bob Wasloff, who's in our planning department, he's a good sport, taking his picture, getting his flu shot. Again, another service that we provide to county employees because it helps them stay healthy and certainly helps us increase productivity. One of the things that the board has been good about is every now and then to do a little bit more with holidays than on the normal schedule, and that is something that county employees absolutely very much appreciate. Our wellness group continues to expand their efforts. I am not the poster child for the county's wellness program, that's for sure, but I would tell you that despite what you see here, there's a lot that's going on, and it's really good. There was even a race out front that we had, a 40-yard dash. I'm proud to say that I came in fourth. There were 4 runners, but I did come in fourth. Turning to infrastructure, I'm just going to stop on this picture. This is the dam at Lake Mooney. This is a labyrinthine weir. And I went to public schools, and I can say that. This is a labyrinthine weir, which is one of the ingenious designs that Mr. Dayton and Harry Kreiser and Brian Council, who's the project manager, came up with to help move the water across there. And as you can see, it's much larger than that, but it's a way to cram a whole lot of surface area into a small space. The reservoir is full. All 3 reservoirs are full thanks to the snow and the rain that we've had. Turning to infrastructure, we're going to have a detailed brief at the March 15th board meeting, so I won't go into much detail. Just want to hit a few of the highlights. The school board's adopted CIP, which they adopted last Thursday night, is fully funded in our proposal. We are able to maintain the capital program for parks bonds and general government projects. As the board is aware, we have had to pull back on some of the road projects due to the reduction in gas tax projections, as well as lower debt capacity. We've got some ideas on how we can potentially move some of those projects forward with HB2 funding and potentially impact fees, and we'll be talking about that at March 15th. We are fully funding our state stormwater mandates, and I'll talk a little bit more about utility rate adjustments. Debt service overall for county and schools is increasing $1.8 million. Embry Mill Park opens March 19th with the St. Patrick's Day tournament. that SASA will be holding. The Rouse Center will open in April, and then Lake Mooney opens for recreational use in May of 2016. There's the CIP. You got it? Okay. We obviously will provide a much more detailed brief. This is the debt-funded portion of the CIP, and it does balance over the 10-year window about $318 million in debt-funded school and county projects. You're familiar with the school's CIP. What's in it that the school board adopted would be the new program for Moncure Elementary School with $2 million to be funded with cash. The school board also is using the new prototype for Ferry Farm Elementary, but that will be built with 750 seats for kids. It's a 950-seat platform, but 750 seats expandable by another 200. That did move from 1 year from FY18 to FY19. Middle school renovation at Drew, shared new fleet services facility for county and schools. There's a plan to do North Stafford High School Library just as we did at Brook Point. That would be funded with cash, and high school number 6 moves to a 2028 opening. I mentioned transportation. Some of the projects have moved out of the 5-year window into the second 5 years, and we'll talk about that more at the March 15th briefing. Turning to our utilities, water and sewer utilities in the county, the operating budget is up just a little bit, 3.8%. Our capital budget is less than the previous year, but that's due to the timing of projects. We're anticipating adding about 2.2% of accounts, which is also consistent with the growth of housing in the county. But here's our challenge for financing our utilities in the county, our water, sewer utilities. Over the last decade, consumption has dropped 1.2%, while customer accounts have risen by 19%. People are simply using considerably much less water than they used to. Low-flow toilets and much more efficient washers and other appliances are saving water and saving money. We are proposing a rate adjustment. This is needed for state and federal mandates for our water and sewer utility to cover debt service on the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, which were done as part of the Chesapeake Bay 2010 Act requirements, operational changes and new facilities, maintenance costs for aging and expanding infrastructure. It seems you can't read any national newspaper today without seeing some water and sewer facility across the nation who hasn't maintained their system at the level that we do, and the challenges that those communities are facing. Adherence to our financial policies, and we did have a multi-year period when there were no rate increases, and so we've been catching up from that. Our proposal, which we would send to the Utilities Commission for their public hearing and then board public hearing, would include an increase in the fixed charge over a 3-year period and a 5% increase over a 3-year period on the consumption charges. This new rate structure will result in a more stable stream of revenue that will also help promote conservation. Some localities don't have consumption charges. They simply have fixed charges for water. We want to make sure that we have a charge to continue to encourage conservation, but to bring in more of it from the fixed charges. This would keep us in line or lower with our peer localities, and the revenue will cover capital improvement investments for targeted commercial growth areas throughout the county based on our economic development priorities, as well as maintain our infrastructure at the level that it needs. I mentioned our mandated stormwater management program. As we've looked at this slide, in prior years it was over $40 million, thanks to the work of our public works team, Steve Hubble, who's now out in Boise, Idaho, who's part of the Stafford County Loaned Executive Program, to the folks out in Idaho, Chris Rapp, and now Paul Sante. The DEQ has approved a dramatically scaled back program, which again is about $18 million over the 20-year period. All these costs are part of the general fund. I want to talk just a minute about what we've been able to do in human services. Donna Kraus and her team have made great progress on the board's adopted human services master plan. All of our partner agencies are now based on a regional collaborative model and a review of the 5 localities in Planning District 16. We're establishing common outcomes throughout the human services agencies in the region and evaluating data also on that basis to both impact and steer the programs. In social services, the great work that Michael Muse and his team are doing, just a substantial demand, particularly in Medicaid the applications that have come in under the ACA, irrespective of whether folks are eligible, but just substantial demand. The number of benefits recipients has increased nearly 1,800 since FY14. And I think one of our great human services success stories, in that a community of 140,000 people, we have only 30 children in foster care. And the social services team is just amazing in both on the prevention side, but then when prevention doesn't work, getting children with a family member and getting them out of a foster care situation. Hopefully success that we can continue. Our partner agency process continues. We've been very successful in reviewing services to make sure that we're minimizing duplication and getting the best bang for our buck with Stafford County tax dollars. We're also shifting our focus from agency funding to program funding, again, to make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for the buck. To our intergovernmental partners, this is what's in the proposed budget. The Central Rappahannock Regional Library had an increase of about $60,000 for books and materials, and as the chairman has explained before, what you'll see is this is part of a true-up with Spotsylvania County coming to fully fund their share. I mentioned the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, a small increase for GWRC, the George Washington Regional Commission, based on per capita charges. The CSB, the Rappahannock Area Community Services Board, has asked for the participating localities to support a child psychiatrist for the mental health outpatient program. This is one position, and Stafford would pay our share of that, and some operational increases for the Office on Youth and the Thurman Brisbane Homeless Shelter in their employment program. There is some flexibility for the board built in to our budget proposal. Our cash capital and contingency reserve are fully funded. State revenues are estimated at the lower of the two budgets that are now under consideration in Richmond, and our assessment does allow for appeals of about 1% of assessed values. So based on the commissioner's good news, and hopefully the good news in the next couple of weeks as he works through the appeals process, there should be some additional flexibility. Here's our budget calendar for the next 6 weeks. On March 15th, we'll talk about health insurance with the school board at the joint work session, compensation and market competitiveness, the capital improvement program, and the partner agencies. We will also ask the board on March 15th to authorize the public hearings. They'll be held on April the 5th, and what we would ask for is public hearings on the fiscal 17 budget, the calendar 16 tax rates, the capital improvement program, the utility rates, and the FY17 school bonds for capital projects, or the VPSA bonds, with budget adoption scheduled for April 19th, which should be sufficient time to allow for the tax bills to get mailed in early May. So leaving FY17 for just a minute and looking at the challenges that we face going into FY18, none of these should be a surprise. The jail's 5-year plan shows a $1 million increase for FY18. The budget, I didn't mention it in the public safety section, but this budget does have about a $900,000 increase for corrections. We did save some money with the juvenile detention center. The jail is a fairly substantial increase resulting from a couple of factors. One is that the ICE inmates, or the federal inmates, are no longer coming into the facility. That was a $1.6 million budget hit to the jail budget, as well as the jail's ability to have fund balance now that our excess fund balance, which we were using to pay down debt service, that has been reduced. So there should be another $1 million increase in FY18. Debt service will go up. It will be modest compared to prior years, but debt service will go up. We're really making a down payment on our public safety staffing plan this year. We have a lot more work to do with that. One more year of cash capital increase to comply with our financial policies. The second year of the market adjustments for both school and county employees. And then our technology fee, which was instituted by the board in 2012, that sunsets in 2017, and we'll want to talk to you throughout the fiscal year about if that's something that the board would like to continue to help offset the cost of the next phase of that, which is the much anticipated online permitting. So here's a quick summary. 2% salary increase for school and county employees, market salary adjustments for school and county employees, full funding of the superintendent's proposed budget, full funding of the school board's adopted CIP, 19 new additional public safety positions, 5 new non-public safety positions, and funding of our partnership with Germanna, Stafford Schools, and the library, operating funds for Embry Mill and Lake Mooney parks, and strict adherence, as you might expect, to our financial policies. Yesterday was Leap Day, and we thought it would be interesting to take this once every 4-year experience and look back to our county over the last 3 Leap Days. As our population and school enrollment has grown, we've added jobs, parks, schools, and businesses, all while enhancing the county's bond rating. And you can see the progress there over the last 12 years and where we were the last Leap Days. So we're making a little fearless forecast here of where we might be as a community on the next Leap Day. Nearly 150,000 people, including 30,000 school children, will enjoy Virginia's 8th indoor Olympic-size pool at the Rouse Center, playing tournaments at the Embry Mill Park, and canoe, kayak, and fish on Lake Mooney, Virginia's newest lake. 45,000 people work in Stafford, and over 2,500 businesses will call Stafford home. Our high schoolers will enjoy the expanded and modernized Brook Point, Colonial Forge, and Mountain View High Schools, and the new Media Center at North Stafford High School. The new Moncure Elementary School will be open, and a redevelopment of its former site for commercial purposes will be underway. Retail and commercial opportunities will abound at the Aquia Town Center, Stafford Village Center, and Quantico Corporate Center. The board's continued vigilance and responsible, accountable government will add AAA bond rating trophies from Fitch and Moody's to our AAA from S&P. This will make Stafford one of the very few triples in the country. We look back and remind ourselves that great communities are not accidental, and that together we can make great things happen. After all, every overnight success is a decade in the making. So some thank yous, and then I'll take your questions. First, to the Board of Supervisors for your continued support and your direction in preparing this budget. My thanks to the school board and to Dr. Benson and his team for our great partnership on both sides of Route 1 towards building a great community, and all of my colleagues here on Team Stafford who make this budget seem easy, even though it isn't department heads and constitutional officers. It's a wonderful team, and these 4 ladies down here who are the best in the business, Nancy Collins, Maria Perrott, Donna Olson, and Kim Herman, who are simply awesome, and when I am done, they will answer all your questions about the budget. I'll say this, and then I'll close, Mr. Chairman. I was recently asked which was our best year in Stafford. I've been here 12 years, as I mentioned. I thought, well, maybe it was 2008, when we weathered the drought and helped the people of the Ingham Run North neighborhood recover from Mother's Day weekend tornado. But I thought, no, that's not our best year. Was it 2009, 2010, 2011, when we didn't just weather the recession, but we actually thrived? And I thought, no, that wasn't our best year. Was it 2014, when our year-long celebration of the county's 350th brought our county together in ways never seen before? That was a great year, but no, it wasn't the best. How about last year, when we achieved our AAA bond rating and crossed the 40,000 job threshold? Was 2015 our best year? No. You ask me what our best year is? Next year. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, the budget is yours.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Mr. Snellings.
Are you running for political office?
It is election day. I'm running for county administrator.
I think you got the job. Question, has the school board passed the superintendent's budget?
No, sir. The CIP, they have the operating budget. I understand they're going to take it up next week.
So they're going to take it up at their next meeting?
Yes, sir. That's my understanding.
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chairman, if I can. I've been in this county and following county politics for longer than I'd like to admit to. I can tell you that now. And it is the first time in my career, either on this board or as a citizen, that I've seen the board fully fund the superintendent's budget. We've come a long way. So thank you, Mr. County Administrator. Thank you, Dr. Benson, and thank the school board.
Mr. Mildy?
Thanks, Anthony. You guys, you always do a great job, and sometimes we've had been a lot more difficult in the past to make this presentation, and we don't have to have a big discussion about tax rates, or at least we're down to a percent. The sheriff, on his way out, made a plea to this board that we were as severely underfunded in the sheriff's department as we are anywhere else, including the rest of public safety, fire and rescue. I'm curious how you have decided to increase or propose increasing fire and rescue by 10%, but not doing anything close to that for the sheriff.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that where we're coming from, Mr. Milley, I mean, the public safety staffing plan calls for dozens of positions, both for law enforcement and fire and rescue. And the need is there. It's great. It's documented. I believe that the need right now for the county's fire and rescue system is acute. That one metric that we use 80% of the time to respond 8 minutes or less 90% of the time, we're falling well short of that. And 15 people is a down payment on that to help us move that slightly. The sheriff's office, because of its history with the county, our fire and rescue department is only 10 years old, at least with career staffing. And so there has been additional staff some years. The sheriff's office has been a steady progression of additional staff over the long haul. Given where we were with the board's priorities and the competing priorities that we had, I felt the situation with fire and rescue was more acute and needed to be addressed. And so that's why I made the recommendation I did.
Let me just delve into that a little further. I know we'll have time to talk about this, but when you our goal, the goal of 90% in 8 minutes or fewer, how are we doing towards that goal? Are you telling me that we're going backwards on that goal?
I'm telling you, we're holding fairly steady. We're in the neighborhood of the low 70s. What's it, Chief? High 60s, high 60%. And the challenge continues with volunteer staffing. And our public safety staffing plan, the fire and rescue component, was built on our two busiest stations staffing at 100%, and for a variety of reasons. And those folks are doing the best they can. I mean, they're really making a contribution. But Company 1 and Company 2 are not able to be anywhere near 100%. And so those 15 people would help with that stopgap.
I understand.
Until we can.
My question isn't about the need. God knows we have the need, and we don't have enough money even in a good year.
Yeah.
My question is about the relationship to, we'll use that measurement, a 90% in 8 minutes, compared to the crime rate in Stafford County. I'm very concerned about the crime rate in Stafford County and how our level of staffing in the sheriff's department is affecting or not affecting or having a negative effect on the trends. That's what I would ask you to compare, and you may have. That's
sure, and I'll get back to you with a more detailed answer. I mean, the need is there. We agree.
I just said that.
We agree.
Okay, and the other thing that really concerns me, of course, is that this board has, or we've decided that transportation is somehow a separate issue, funded solely by the gas tax and recordation, whatever small other taxes we get, after the airport, which is only $80,000 a year, and the Fred busing, which is $400 and something thousand a year last check. And so when that money runs out, we just start cutting projects. We're cutting $30 million, I think was the last number you gave me, in local projects in the next 6 years because we've run out of gas tax money. And I just wonder if the board, if the conversation would be had that is that how we're going to do it? If gas stays at $1.37 or $1.27 or whatever it ends up, are we really going to hold Parks and Rec, harmless while we cut projects out of our transportation and do the same thing we've always done, which is blame it on the state? Or is this board willing to consider that we might have to reallocate or readjust or find a way to dedicate us a penny or two in the tax rate to transportation projects? Because I'm just getting warmed up on this James Hill problem, the Brook Road safety improvement, one of the number one projects after you got Mountain View out of the way in Stafford. We're cutting some serious projects while we're still talking about, this board just out of committee is going to be talking about spending more money and borrowing more money for Parks and Rec, and we have done a hell of a job spending on Parks and Rec since I've been here, and not always with my support either, disproportionately. And I just want that conversation. We need to have that conversation. Is that where we want to go in this county? Continue to look at it that way. We might have to look at some communities around us and see if that's what we want to do. But good job. I mean that. I don't mean to be wet blanket. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a comment.
Sellers?
I think it's a great budget, but I don't think you always give credit to as much credit as is due. You mentioned social services, you mentioned Donna Kraus, but it's not just here in Stafford. The region has almost 500,000 people in it, and we have 123 homeless people. We have very few people when you take into consideration the numbers on food stamps and receiving these services. And so when we look at the partner agencies, they're doing a great job. But the RACSB and the mental, specifically that psychiatric position, is very important to this community. And the things that they're able to do at the RACSB is very important to this community. I'm impressed by the RACSB. I work for Northern CSB, as many of you know, and what they're able to accomplish is far exceeds anything that most CSBs are able to accomplish. And I guess I do have one comment to the roads, and that is, I don't mind having the conversation to look at the roads that we've been cutting out of the CIP, but I don't know if it's in direct competition, like Mr. Milday likes to say. So, but thank you.
Ms. Baumke?
Yeah, great budget. A lot of information there, a lot for us to digest. I just wanted to add on to what Mr. Milday said regarding the Sheriff's Department, because I have been on Public Safety Committee for 2 years, and I just want to remind everybody that, you know, from the state's perspective, not from us from a county, Sheriff Jett has been down 13 deputies now, Sheriff Decatur, for 2 years, and that is based on our population. And so if we're not going to fund those, they are taking those resources and they're using them other places in the county. So I would like to just echo what Mr. Milday said on that front. And we have worked, and we are, you know, we do have this hybrid structure here in Stafford County with the fire and rescue, and we've done a lot of work regarding the protocols. And, you know, I think that there may be more conversations that need to be had in the Public Safety Committee on a number of these things that we might need to consider. Thank you.
Mr. Cavalier?
I just want to say it out loud because after 12 years I didn't think I'd be able to say this, but we have fully funded the school superintendent's request. I just want to reiterate that because that I never thought I'd be able to say that, to tell you the truth. And I think that there's accolades on both sides here. I mean, we cooperated very nicely. We've had the joint FAB meetings, some good sessions that we've worked out things, and you see it resulted in something that I think we can all live with and everyone benefits. So good job.
Thanks, sir.
Mrs. Maurer?
So as the freshman on the board, I want to thank you for making this a relatively easy budget year. Looking forward to getting down into the details, but fully funding the superintendent's request is a great start. Returning those teachers back to the classroom, which was very important to me, and the ones that we laid off in previous budget cycles. So thank you very much. And also thank you to the school board and Superintendent Benson. We have entered a new paradigm of cooperation and collaboration, and it really shows in this budget. We've worked very hard. Both staffs have worked together, and also both finance and budget committees have worked together. And it shows in this budget, and I want to thank you, and looking forward to the next 2 months and getting down into the details and you know, making some adjustments. But this is a great base to start from. So thank you to you, thank you to the staff, and also thank you to the school board. We're entering a new era. Nice to see.
Any other questions? Okay. Just had a couple final comments. I wanted to acknowledge that the school board chair is here, Ms. Holly Hazard, has been coming to a lot of our meetings. It's certainly noted and appreciated. I think I saw school board member Fallon. Yeah, Emily Fallon is here as well, so thank you for being here. For me, I think the superintendent's budget request, this is probably the first time I've trusted the numbers as much as actually ever. I know that you have taken it upon yourself to personally get to the bottom of every single number you possibly could. I know last year you wanted to have it all done, but we weren't quite there. We agreed that we would do more next year. But I also told you I've heard next year an awful lot. This is the first time that I think the superintendent has followed through on that we will get to this before next year. So I want to thank you, and I think that's why we have such a good request. And to the county staff, we spent a lot of time at a retreat trying to make sure you understood our priorities. And as we saw this budget presentation. I think you heard us loud and clear. I can't think of one priority we mentioned that you didn't touch upon in the budget. So I think it's a great place for us to start, and I know you'll support us as we craft it to the final budget that we'll take to the public. So thank you. Okay, next we have the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull an item from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item number 12.
Okay, item number 12. Any other items? Okay, and remember, item 20 is no longer part of the consent agenda, so I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda minus number 12. Moved by Mr. Milday. Second? Second by Ms. Sellers. Please cast your votes. Tally the votes. The motion passes 7-0. Item number 12, Mr. Cavalier.
The reason I pulled this was because we haven't seen this item before. It didn't go through Public Safety Committee, and it hasn't been briefed to the board. So I think I just need to get a better understanding, a briefing of some sort.
Sure. Mr. Cavalier, I'll start. The chief and Shannon Wagner are here. The board a few years ago adopted a policy for overfills, which allows for uniform public safety to hire 10% over the authorized strength, which helps us, designed to help us maintain our staffing levels as we have turnover and transition. The chief and his staff are about to initiate an academy. 24 is the maximum for that academy, and we were hoping to have the full complement at the academy. There are 9 vacancies in the department. They have so 11 would be 10%, so that would be 20. So the authorization, this would be a temporary authorization, would be for an additional 4, so that we can run a full academy beginning in April and have those folks hopefully on the street by the end of the calendar year after that academy is completed. We have identified the funds in the current year, and then the positions are certainly part of the proposal that I just presented to the board for FY17. And again, the chief is here if you have further questions.
Is that what you needed here, Mr. Cavalier? Do you want to defer it and have it go to committee, or are you comfortable with moving it?
Well, if the whatever the board wishes here.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Okay, we have
Second.
a motion for approval, and we have a second. Please cast your votes. And tally the vote. The motion passes 7-0. Next, we have item 23, Finance and Budget. Consider the school board's new elementary education specifications.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this has been on the agenda before. Superintendent answered some questions earlier. It is incorporated into the CIP proposal that we just provided, and we recommend approval. So I'd be happy to answer any questions we can.
Have any further questions on this? Mr. Snellians.
Is our vote necessary in this?
Yeah, I think it is, Mr. Snellings, because the school board and the superintendent are looking for direction on the design, because if we don't use if the school board doesn't use the new prototype, then they're going to need to give their architect a different direction.
But it was my understanding that we don't need to necessarily approve it. It's already been approved by the school board. Are we just approving the additions to the CIP? Is that more or less what we're doing? Or?
Well, I think that's a good way to characterize it. This item came forward ahead of the CIP process. The school board has now made some adjustments in their CIP to cover the cost. I mean, I certainly it's the board's discretion as to whether or not you'd like to act on it. I think it comes back from the school board looking for some direction or endorsement of the,
well, it just seems
the
like
different prototype.
The cart got put in front of the horse.
Yes, it was.
And that's why I'm confused on this thing. Okay, thank you.
And if you recall, I did try to send out an email. The school board chair did alert me to the fact that the timing was kind of rushed, and that if we decided to vote this ed spec down, they do have the opportunity to go back. It's only a couple weeks into the design, and they could go back towards more of the previous design. So if for some reason we're not in support, a no vote would affect that project, and it would change it significantly. So, Ms. Baumke.
Yes, I have a question, and I'm sure Dr. Benson can answer this. The additional cost for the gymnasium and the cafeteria, is that broken out in our agenda item? Actually, that's a question for
No, ma'am, it's not, but Dr. Benson does have that number.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking that question, Dr. Benson, in a lot of our newer schools, and I guess I'm thinking of Conway, Anthony Burns, Rocky Run, I believe, the multi-purpose room is a combination of the cafeteria and the gymnasium, right? And then there's a wall that goes up when they have PE. One of the reasons, if I remember correctly, that the school board used that design was so that you could get an entire school population in that area. So like at some of the older schools, Falmouth, Grafton, even those that we've renovated, Stafford Elementary, you cannot get the entire school population, kindergarten through 5th grade, in those cafeterias. Is that correct?
I'll have to ask Mr. Horan to respond to that because I'm not sure. And then I can respond to the additional square footage and what's different about what's being proposed for the gymnasium in the new design. But
Okay.
Mr. Horan to respond to the
Okay, thank you.
for previous design.
Do you need me to restate that?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, you're correct. Greg Mackey was the assistant principal at Rocky Run, which is
Okay.
one of the first of the standard prototypes that we built. And the entire school population in an assembly can in
Right.
fact get into the entire facility when it's wide open, knowing that there are windows during the day that they could in fact utilize that, and not during the lunch period.
Okay, so the way that this is designed right now with Moncure, would they be able to fit the entire school population into that repurpose, the multi-purpose space? Or are you going to have, is it going to be more like the Grafton, Stafford L, and Falmouth Elementary?
Well, we're not exactly sure because the design hasn't been established yet, but the ed specs creates two different spaces. Could those spaces be together and allow for that connectivity? The answer is yes. Will it? We're not sure as we cultivate the design.
Because from what I understand from some of the principals is that's something that they, and maybe Mr. Mackey could speak to this, that is something that they really like, that they can get the entire school population in there. So I'm trying to understand if we really need the gymnasium, if we take that square footage and put that back into the multi-purpose room, if that's really something that the principals want. And
as a principal, I can argue both ways. It was nice at Rocky Run whenever you could fit everybody inside there. However, I will tell you, it's still a mile back. And whenever you're inside that room and you had 950 kids, back in my time, whenever I was there, we were bursting at the seams. So, yes, we fit everybody inside the room, and it was nice to have that for pep rallies. But if you're sitting back by the serving lines in the cafeteria with the stage on the other side of the room, it's not exactly ideal for the kids to be paying attention. So, thinking about it from that perspective, knowing that the size of the gym is a little bit larger, you could have two good assemblies. Whenever we need to go outside, there's place to go outside. Moncure situation, typically we're stuck doing 3.
Okay.
Because it's much smaller. So just the idea of having 2 assemblies, K2, 3, 5, it would make a big difference.
Okay, so could you run those 2 assemblies versus 3 in a new multi-purpose room without the gymnasium, if you designed it correctly?
I think either way, you would still have for timing-wise, you have to have a gym. Whether you call it multi-purpose or a gym, either way, you would have that separate spot because that multi-purpose, half of it's being used as a gym. So I think it's how we name it. It's how we talk about it. I'm not sure if I answered your question with that, but either way,
So
one half of it's going to be used as a gymnasium the entire day.
Right. Okay, so we're really going to have a gym and a half, the way it's proposed right now.
That's correct.
Is that right?
A little bit larger, yes, that is correct.
Okay, all right. That's what I wanted to understand. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cavalier?
I'm going to make a motion for this, but I'm going to do a little prefacing here because and go back to the visit that I had with you, Dr. Benson, and that was eye-opening for me. And Principal Mackey was there that day and walked us around a large part of the time. And he made a statement today that, the schools are not your Charlie Brown schools anymore. And that couldn't be more true. although I did go to school with a guy named Charlie Brown, and he pitched for the high school baseball team, and he pitched a no-hitter. So
I
I
second
digress.
with a comment.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moda.
He's seconding your motion.
I seconded you ahead of time.
I haven't made the
I
motion.
don't think you've made it yet.
And you know, I learned a lot that day in particular. This is like, I think, third or fourth time I've been on one of these visits with you, but I learned the most last week because of the way things were done in the elementary school. And terms like collaborative space, interactive learning, you know, those terms didn't exist whenever I went to school. Or if they did, I would have thought it was time for dodgeball in the gym. So, you know, and inclusion, you know, that didn't exist either. But I you know, the old way of going to particularly elementary school and sitting at your wooden or metal desk, very uncomfortable, only getting up for, you know, recess and milk breaks and lunch and phys ed, you know, or it's a different world now. You know, there's so many more people involved, and people are up and around, and there are tables, and you do makeshift ways of doing that now for buildings that were constructed for a totally different environment or educational environment. And so I think this really impressed upon me the need to have the new 21st century redesign, and I think it's going to benefit our children for years to come. So based on what I saw that day, it sold me, and you know, I'm hoping more and better things to come, but I'd like to make a motion right now for resolution R16-68.
Okay. We have a motion, and Mr. Mildy would like to second it. Do we have any discussion, Mr. Mildy?
Yes. In addition to the fact that it's an amazing design and it's cutting edge, it's also it's affordable. In the context of the overall budget and at least the first several years of the CIP, you did flash that in front of us quickly, but there's a CIP jump up in year 7 or something that's really scary. I'm not sure if that all balances or how that gets like that, but it appears that you've done this in an affordable fashion for the next several years. And so, because I have no doubt that you could do a great job teaching our children in a traditional brick, you know, what we're used to seeing, but new. So I don't think this is necessarily as, you know, dire with the changing needs. Honestly, I'd have to be honest. But because you've done it in a way that we can afford to do it, and it is, I'm sure will make a difference, a positive difference over a nice, new, shiny school, then I could support it. So, thanks.
Okay, Mrs. Mauer?
I just want to make note of the school board's willingness to come back and approve a CIP that balanced the increases for Moncure Elementary School with other priorities that they had. So they went back to the drawing board, which is one of the things that we asked them to do last time, and found cuts in order to afford this new design. And I want to make sure that it's on the record that there is appreciation for that hard work and working with us instead of asking us to find the cuts for them. So want to express my appreciation for that. It was a question that was asked 2 weeks ago, and you guys came to the table.
Mrs. Baumke?
I just have one other comment. I just want to say for the record that, and Dr. Benson addressed this, that there is not going to be a bus barn, diesel pumps, and also a salt dome up there. That is correct, right? Okay, because there is a rumor out there that was going to be added to the project. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. I just want to thank you for allowing me to be on the committee that actually helped redesign the ed spec. For me, that was, like Mr. Cavalier said, months ago I had seen all the things you were talking about, so when you're bringing up the different ways of teaching, and it was easy for me to relate to. Unfortunately, we can't all 7 be on the committee, so maybe next time we'll have 1 or 2 people. But I think this design is supposed to serve us for quite a long time, and so I am happy to ask everyone to cast your votes on this resolution. Please tally the vote. The motion passes 7-0. Next on the agenda, we have item 24, County Administration, budget and appropriate funds to the Armed Services Memorial Revenue Fund.
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time, I do have the film. If anybody wants to see it again, I showed it at a meeting a couple months ago. That is ready to go if you'd like to see it, but in the interest of time, I think the background report was very thorough. Unless there are any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them, or the county administrator will. I'd like to make a motion for Reso R16-82.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I just want to clarify, because R1682 may not mean much to the public. Basically, what we're proposing to do here is budget and appropriate $225,000 from the FY16 contingency to the revenue fund that we established at a previous meeting, just so everyone knows what we're doing. Is there any comments?
Is this the last
Mr.
vote
Miller?
we'd take before this? I mean, is this fully fund this, or where does this take us in the process?
No, this is not fully funded. It gives it about a third of the funding.
Right, so we'll have another chance to have this discussion.
Well, we don't plan to come back to the board for any more funding.
Okay, is this the ask from the?
Oh, yes, we're setting up 501c3 now. Once that's geared up, we'll start collecting money.
I was
asking for donations.
Talking to one of the members on the committee, my suggestion of trying to do this in the way in which you see all other memorials done, almost these types of memorials for each county or city with the names, is gaining traction. So I can support this because I believe the person I spoke to that this is going to be seriously considered and actually insisted upon by at least a couple of those committee members.
Well, we've got Klein Memorial coming in. They're the designers. They're coming into our next meeting to discuss that very subject. The issue we've got is we cannot identify those folks that paid the ultimate sacrifice before World War I. We can only identify from World War I forward because all the records, Civil War records, everything in the county courthouse were destroyed during the Civil War.
Could you support working around that so that you would that was a note made in addition that we certainly know many who have?
I'm going to hold that support until I see what the architect says. If the architect says, yes, I can do it rather easily, fine. If the architect comes back and says, okay, it's going to cost you another $300,000, that could kill the whole project. So our next meeting is Tuesday, 3 o'clock in ABC, and that will be a subject. But you're right, there is support.
Good.
Okay.
I want yours.
I'm sorry?
I want your support, but I'll wait for it.
Yeah, as soon as I see what the cost is.
Thanks, Gary.
Any other discussion? Okay, please cast your votes. Tally the votes. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you all very much.
Next is item 25, Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities, criteria for the selection of athletes featured in the display case at the Jeff Rouse Swim and Sports Center. You're going to lead this?
I have a committee report.
Okay, that would be great. Mr. Cavalier.
Earlier, so, and this was with Ms. Baumke and Ms. Sellers last week. Basically, we decided, like I said before, to make this as positive as possible and to make it as clean and easy to do initially. And therefore, one of the first decisions that we agreed to was to honor all the Stafford Olympians that we have, which there are a grand total of 7. Jeff Rouse, Mark Lindsay, Arlene Lemus, Conrad Adams, Anthony Buddy Lee, Roxanne Thompson, and Thomas Baker. So those will be the initial people inducted into the Hall of Fame. We would then move to set up a committee that would be appointed by this board but would not include any board members, Parks and Rec Committee members, or other staff that this would be a committee comprised of, well-known, some of these athletes that maybe are already in it, other people in the community, longtime coaches, athletic directors, anybody who has a good history of sports in Stafford County, to make that committee then the selection panel for future inductees, and do this on a yearly basis, just like the Baseball Hall of Fame or any Hall of Fame does it. Say you had just throwing out the number of 10, if you had 10 committee members, you would need at least 75% of the votes from that committee to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So that it wouldn't be an easy thing to do, but it would certainly, be a very high level. And then we talked about some criteria that we would have, and that basically is things like connection to Stafford, distinguishing themselves in Olympic, national, international, world class, or professional sports, or NCAA Division I All-American, be of high moral character, an example of good sportsmanship, demonstrate good citizenship, and made meaningful contributions to the community, and must have finished their careers at least 10 years before they are nominated. And in addition, we would have kind of a special category, whereas people like coaches and other community individuals could be involved, Special Olympians and other athletes of note, and even perhaps athletes who, died before they were able to fully achieve their greatness. And so, that would be something that we could do on a yearly basis. We would have this wall that we have the display cases now, that the Olympians would all be named at, and then in the future, that wall would expand out on each side, and these new individuals who were the inductees in the future would be placed in there for recognition. And so I think, we don't have to rush into anything, but we feel that, this was the best way to handle it, because we're on a pretty short-term notice here on the opening. If we can get this open next month, that'd be a great thing. And we to fully vet people at this point, comprise a committee and do all that would require a lot more than the month that we have. So I would target 2017 as the first inductee class after the initial. So, I'll defer to Ms. Sellers and Ms. Baumke if they'd like to add anything further, if I missed anything.
I guess the only thing we didn't really talk about is what would be our target for when we wanted to have the committee and everything kind of written down, on paper and going forward, kind of a target date.
After the budget.
Right, after the budget, right. That was the only
Well,
thing.
and I think we did briefly mention that we probably should at least have one more meeting as a
Right.
group to pin those things down.
Okay.
And I think we bought ourselves time by saying we would induct the 7
Right.
Olympians now, and that would give us the luxury of time to
Right.
set these other things in motion.
Okay,
We'd
right.
come back before the full board with the recommendations and some criteria that we would have established.
So we'll have another meeting in another couple months.
Or sooner, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions? So with that, when you come back, I think it'd probably be good form if we had like a draft charter for this new group we're putting together, so it spells out who's allowed to serve. I mean, you mentioned a lot of the details, and it's really good that you guys thought about all that. But when we bring it back to vote, I'd like to have that down on paper so everybody knows what we're doing. So moving forward, so we can get through the ribbon cutting, I think what I'm looking for is a sense of the board that the 7 Olympians that we've identified is good enough to move forward. And I think I'm seeing that's consensus. So is that what staff needed?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, next is item number 26. This is new business, so it's just for discussion. It's discussion of the Board of Supervisors bylaws. Ms. Baumke is the chair of that committee.
Yes. Sorry about that. Yes, Chairman Thomas and I had a meeting with the county attorney and other staff members regarding updating our bylaws. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I mean, you guys have probably read it all yourselves. We're just trying to formalize everything that we've talked about. One item that is new that was brought to Chairman Thomas's attention is you cannot chair a committee if you are the chair of the Board of Supervisors. So we formalized that. And I think the biggest change is really that at the end of any calendar year, we really don't have a chair from our last meeting until our organizational meeting in January. So we established some guidelines with some guidance from the county attorney's office on that, so that we're really never without a chair from our last meeting in December to our organization meeting in January. So I think the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory, but yes.
Mr. Mildy?
It's always just been the county administrator basically fills that role. Is that, are you seeing, do you take these ideas from other boards? I'm just curious, we got the idea.
This was his request.
Actually, this was at Mr. Romanello's request.
That wasn't my question.
Oh.
But okay.
I think it's.
Well, he's going to tell you where he got it from.
Just to make a distinction, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the bylaws are unchanged that the clerk to the board, who's the county administrator, would open the organizational meeting.
Yeah.
This has to do with the chairman of the board continuing into the new year.
Right, I read it. Yeah, I'm just curious. My question was.
No, we did not look at other counties and what they do.
I'm curious.
Yes, there is. Yeah, I can answer that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We did take a look at that for you. Probably didn't share that with you.
Okay.
But, you see different things in different jurisdictions. They have all kinds of equations and methodologies, and this is one that is acceptable. And we've kind of tweaked this in accordance with our discussions and come up with a succession plan, if you will, for this. If this doesn't happen, then you go to this, then this, and what have you. So take a look at it. I think it works, and it's only just a bridge about 7 days.
Right, you have seen this in peer communities.
Well, we've seen variations of this. We kind of put our own touch on this in the context of what the committee wanted and what the staff was suggesting. But take a look at this and see if this is something in the next week or 2 weeks that is acceptable to you.
Not that complicated. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Snellies.
I agree with what you've got here. I'd like to see the committee reconvene and set some bylaws for our committee system.
Okay.
I haven't been able to find anything that governs that committee system or says how it should run. I think we need some bylaws to in place for it.
Good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'd like to add is that I think Mr. Romanello asked us to add this is because for that week or 10 days, whatever it may be, he's like, I don't have a chairman of the board. So for him, I think it was a little unnerving. So I think it's good. All right, well, we will reconvene and we can add in that other discussion. Thank you.
And if anything comes up, now that you're seeing this red line version, just go ahead and shoot it to us. We don't have to come back here to hear it and then reconvene again. So hopefully next time we bring it in, we'll be able to amend the bylaws. Okay, next we have a motion, I believe, for closed meeting.
Whereas the board desires to hold a closed meeting for 1, consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual or probable litigation, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the board, and 2, discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the board, and whereas pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711 A3 and A7, such discussions may occur in closed meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Sellers. Please cast your votes. Tally the votes. Motion passes 7-0. Do we have a motion to certify?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Sellers, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Mauer. Please cast your votes. Tally the votes. Motion passes 7-0. Board is now in recess until 7 p.m. At this time, I'd like to call the 7 p.m. session of the March 1st, 2016 meeting of the Stafford County Board of Supervisors to order. I'd like to read a couple of brief statements. We lost a truly remarkable lady on March 19th, Ms. Donna Cody, former director of the Central Rappahannock Regional Library. Ms. Cody started working for the library in 1971 and served as director from 1981 to 2015. The incredible success and expansion of the library during that time is directly related to Ms. Cody's leadership and vision. During her tenure, the library went from 2 locations to 8 newly constructed or newly renovated branches in Stafford, Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, and Westmoreland counties. The card catalog system evolved into the web-based catalog that is used today. A robust online portal was established for customers, and the CRRL staff has grown to more than 350 people. Ms. Cody also used her position to advocate for libraries across the state, as well as our local system in the General Assembly. The board is appreciative of the gift she has given to our area in helping to establish our wonderful library system, and our thoughts and prayers go to her family, friends, and her coworkers. Ryan Mott was only a 3rd grader at Grafton Village Elementary School, but he touched more lives in his short time on earth than most people will do in a lifetime. Ryan passed away recently after a long and courageous battle with a rare form of brain cancer. Ryan's struggle became the community's struggle, and his loss is sorely felt. Stafford County government came to know Ryan when he said he wanted a kitty to snuggle with, and the animal shelter gave him a kitten and everything he needed to take care of it. A few weeks ago, he and his family came to the shelter and they picked out his new friend. The staff said that the cat immediately began to love on Ryan and fell asleep in his arms. We extend our deepest condolences to Ryan's family and to the community. I would also like to offer the board's condolences and our support to our neighbors to the north in Prince William County. On Saturday, 28-year-old Officer Ashley Gwendon responded to a domestic disturbance call on her first shift as a Prince William County police officer, and she was shot and killed. Officer Gwendon was a Marine Corps Reserve veteran and a double-degree college graduate in aeronautics and forensics. 2 of her fellow officers, David McEwen and Jesse Hempen, were also injured. Every day, police officers everywhere go to work to keep us safe, and they never know what they will face, but they do it because they have a calling to serve. We appreciate the service of Officers Gwendon, McEwen, and Hempen, and public safety officers everywhere for their boundless courage, valor, and sacrifice. We have offered our full support to Prince William County, as well as our prayers and thoughts to the families, friends, and co-workers of these 3 officers. Would you please join me in standing for a moment of silence, after which Supervisor Maurer will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll have presentations by the public. If anyone wishes to address the board on a topic not covered by a public hearing tonight, this will be your opportunity to do so. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. The green light indicates you have 3 minutes, the yellow light indicates 1 minute remaining, and a red light indicates your time has expired. I don't have any speaker cards, so when anyone in the chambers wish to address the board, please come forward. Okay, hearing none, we will close public comment. First item on the agenda this evening is item number 27. That's Planning and Zoning, amend proffered conditions zoned B2 to modify conditions relating to site design standards and building requirements in the Heartwood District. We're also going to handle item 28, which is related, which is Planning and Zoning authorized conditional use permit to allow vehicle fuel sales zoned B2 in a highway corridor overlay district, also in the Heartwood District. Ms. Baker.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Kathy Baker with the Department of Planning and Zoning. And as you stated, I'll be combining this presentation for both applications. The reclassification is actually a request to amend proffered conditions on 2 parcels totaling approximately 25 acres, Zone B2 Urban Commercial, with Sumner Falls LLC as the applicant. The associated conditional use permit is to allow motor vehicle fuel sales in a B2 zoning district and within the Highway Corridor Overlay zoning district, as well as a convenience store within the Highway Corridor Overlay district. And this is a 1.9 acre parcel that's within the 25 acre development. This shows the location on the north side of Warrenton Road, just east of Village Parkway. And you'll see the blue hatched area outlined is the subject of the proffer amendment, and the red square is the conditional use permit area. As you see on the property, a portion of it has been previously graded. That they had an approved grading plan back in 2010. Most of the vegetation along the rear and the eastern property lines were retained at the time. Along the rear property line is Falls Run, which does have 100-foot resource protection area as well as 100-year floodplain associated with that. To the east or to the right of the property, you'll see a portion of the Cardinal Forest neighborhood, and along the frontage of Warrenton Road is a small commercial center. On the opposite side of Warrenton Road is the Walmart Supercenter. And then to the north and the west of the property is currently undeveloped. This was the original GDP approved with the rezoning in 2007 for this site, for the overall site. You can see the red square again is the area of the conditional use permit. See, Warrenton Road is oriented to the left of your screen here. To the top of the screen is a proposed access road into the entire development. You have one additional access road into the property off of Warrenton Road in the area just below the red square. Originally proposed was an anchor store and additional retail and office buildings to the rear of the property, and then 5 pad sites along the frontage of Warrenton Road with interior access circulation. See, this is the generalized development plan with the new area of the conditional use permit overlaid on the old site. Nothing is changing with regard to the layout of the site other than there are now 4 pad sites instead of 5 across the frontage. And this is the actual, zooming into the 1.9 acre property with the proposed Royal Farms convenience store and associated vehicle fuel sales along the frontage. The store itself is approximately 5,400 square feet. You'll see there'd be no direct access to Warrenton Road, but that interior Road A, which would serve the additional pad sites as well as the remaining site. The interior access road would run between the store and the vehicle fuel sales. You'd have landscaping across the frontage. There's also sidewalk proposed along Warrenton Road, and there would also be construction of a third continuous through and right turn lane along the frontage, and these are improvements that would be made by the applicant. There are several proffers. Most of them are incidental to the primary changes. There are multiple changes throughout just with reference to the street names. Village Parkway was originally the name shown on the GDP and in the original proffers where the main access road into the site is. And that's just now being referred to as the main entrance throughout the proffers. The proffer number 7 originally required automatic sprinkler systems for all buildings on the 25 acres, and they've now modified proffer 7 to say that the automatic sprinklers would only apply to buildings 1 story, more than 1 story, or more than 6,000 square feet. This is in line with other commercial developments we've recently approved, and that change has been deemed acceptable by the fire marshal. The primary change to the proffers is with regard to the access off of your interior access roads. As you see, the red circle was the original entrance required to be set back 180 feet off of Warrenton Road. That's now being reduced to 140 feet, and VDOT has determined that change is not impacting the traffic pattern. This just shows, again, the GDP with the new location, and it allows for that access to go across the property about midway through the parcel. And then to mirror that, the main entrance also originally had the 180-foot setback restriction from Warrenton Road, so it's now being modified to 140 feet from Warrenton Road. Another incidental proffer is just deleting outdated stormwater management requirements. There is a new proffer you all have received in your add-on folders tonight. Proffer number 3 does ensure that proffered transportation improvements are tied to the occupancy of this use, the convenience store and the gas pumps. There are other triggers that would require these improvements, such as the turn lane and modifications to the traffic signal at Village Parkway and Warrenton Road and the new leg of the main access road into this property, into the overall 25 acres. The conditions restricted to the 1.9 acres is standard conditions that we have with other projects related to convenience store and fuel pumps. The uses would be in the location as shown on the GDP, and that's to ensure the traffic circulation on the site. The condition for building fuel canopy, dumpster enclosure, and signage would be in conformance with the submitted elevations, which I'll show you in just a second. The loading space, truck delivery, and dumpster pads would be in locations shown on the GDP, and that's to minimize visual aspects. And also the limitation on carnival-style banners and other signage. This is the architectural design, the front elevation and the left and the right side elevation, and specific materials are specified as well. And this is the fuel pump canopies and the monument sign. The applicant did submit a transportation impact statement or study, and does determine that the intersection still operates at a level of service C or better, which is consistent with our transportation plan recommendations in the comp plan. And the study was reviewed and approved by Department of Transportation. So staff is recommending approval of the proffer amendment with the proposed proffers, including the latest modification, which you've received at your desk. We also recommend the approval of the CUP with the proposed conditions, subject to the approval of the proffer amendment. And the Planning Commission did recommend approval of both of these applications unanimously on January 27th. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Milday?
Well, remember when we did this the first time, and I can't remember what. There were some neat old buildings on the site, and I can't remember where was it. We had a lot of discussion about it and what we did with them. There might be some history right there. Do you remember? You weren't here, but you probably know the area, Gary. There was
today. It's a field.
Oh, I know what it is now. But they agreed to let someone take them or study them or something. Does anyone even remember that? No. There was a nice history. When the applicant comes up, they can answer me.
And we can certainly look back in the records as well.
And by the way, a lot of people came up back then from Cardinal Forest. It's nice to see that they trust us more today.
Any other questions of staff?
Yes.
Mr. Snell.
Mr. Chairman. How far are the fuel islands from Cardinal Forest?
Let me just go back to...
Because I noticed the fuel islands are on the back side.
So here, let me see, this one's a little bit better because it shows the residences. Again, the red area is where the convenience store, the gas pumps would be in this location. Cardinal Forest is along this property line, and I believe we determined it's probably about 700 feet. 750 feet to the property lines. So that's the location of the fuel pumps.
Will they sell diesel? Maybe that's an unfair question for you.
I can let the applicant answer that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from staff? Thank you. Next, we'll have the applicant.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors. I'm Clark Lemming. I'm here this evening on behalf of the applicant, Sumner Falls Run, which seeks to introduce a new player in the convenience gas fuel sales market, Royal Farms. I have with me this evening Mr. Klebanoff he's the principal with Summer Falls Run, but also Mr. Jeff Bainbridge, who is the director of real estate for Royal Farms. Royal Farms is a Maryland-based company, started long ago as a milk delivery service with a farm. Opened a milk store in 1959 and now has 167 stores, 170, I was corrected tonight, I think, and is growing rapidly in Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. The nearest Virginia stores are on the Virginia Eastern Shore and in the Hampton Roads area. Their specialty is fried chicken, and I asked Mr. Bainbridge to bring some with him tonight, but I don't think he did. Now, to get to your questions, I don't think there are a plethora of zoning issues here. This is an already zoned site. To answer Mr. Snelling's question first, and then I'll get to Mr. Milday's question, but you're the home district supervisor, so I'll start with you. Diesel fuel sales. There will, like Sheetz and Wawa's, there will be diesel fuel sales for vehicles. The canopy is not large enough to accommodate large trucks. There's no parking for large trucks. I think Mr. English asked at the Planning Commission what would happen if a tractor trailer wanted to come in and buy chicken. Well, not sure where they would park. There's not a parking space on the site that would handle the tractor trailer rig. So there is diesel sales on the property, but they are for passenger vehicles. Maybe a panel truck could fit under the canopy, but that would be the extent of it. Now, when Mr. Klebanoff was nodding in response to your question, Mr. Milday, it was to only say he didn't know anything about any buildings on the property, and then when he bought the property, how many years ago?
2007, 2008.
2007, 2008, there was nothing on the property. So there may have been something that predated that, but by the time the present owner purchased the property, there was no longer anything on the property. So Mr. Sellings may be the best source of any information about that, and I'm not familiar with anything myself. I think Ms. Baker has been through the changes to the proffers and the CUP. They are modest changes to the proffer. They are all to accommodate the Royal Farms, the exception being that the 6,000 now ceiling on the sprinkler systems would apply to any building on the property less than 6,000 square feet. But that was done specifically for Royal Farms. And the conditional use permit, of course, applies to Royal Farms only. It's been thoroughly vetted by your Planning Commission and by your staff, and we hope that the board will welcome Royal Farms to Stafford, and they look forward to being here. I'll be happy to answer any questions. We do have our engineer with us, the applicant, principal for the applicant, and a representative from Royal Farms. So if you have anything occurs to you, please don't hesitate to bring it to our attention.
Any questions for applicant, Mr. Snellings?
Mr. Lehman, what type of lighting, outside lighting, are they going to have?
Mike, are you in a position to address that? I'm going to ask the engineer to do that because he can actually talk about handle things, and then I don't have to worry about that. Introduce yourself.
I'm Mike Bagby with Bagby Goodpasture and Associates. Royal Farms actually has a lighting consultant that does all of their lighting. We will meet the county standards, and if not, we'll ask for a waiver from the county standards. They've already done a lighting plan, and it comes very close to meeting the county standards, and they are in discussions right now as to whether or not they would ask for a waiver or not. There is canopy lighting, there's lighting around the buildings, there's site lighting throughout the parking areas and whatnot.
Canopy is not lit, though.
The canopy is not lit, no. The canopy underneath the canopy is lit.
But the canopy doesn't shine like a
Correct. I'm very
farm.
familiar with it. So other than the canopy lighting, what type outside lighting do you have?
Well, like we're saying, they've got the site lighting on, I think, 19-foot poles.
Here's my concern. My concern is Cardinal Forest.
Yes, sir.
I'm told it's 750 feet away.
That's correct.
But I still have some concern there, especially in the wintertime when the foliage is gone.
Right.
That is a concern of mine.
I believe the lighting is required to be directed down under your ordinance and not out.
But you're saying you're going to try to get a waiver.
I don't think we can get a waiver from directing the light down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not from that, no, sir. Just from
Second question is, what time are grocery deliveries?
That I do not know.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Jeff Bainbridge, Royal Farms.
Director of Real Estate, as we said. Deliveries are usually in the morning at the off-peak hours so they don't interfere with customers.
In the morning being 3 a.m.?
It's probably 4 to 7, 4 to 6.
And who does your delivering? They tractor trailers?
Tractor trailers for the fuel, but the deliveries for all the food products and the drinks and such that we have in there is just box trucks. And the delivery comes in right in through the front door. Or in this
Okay.
case, there could be a back door too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, do you want further information on the lighting? We have more that we
Please.
can provide you if you'd like it.
Hi, my name is Steve Klebanoff. I'm one of the principals in Sumner Falls Run. Just to clarify the waiver, the standard Royal Farms lighting specifications that have down lighting on, shielded lighting on all the site fixtures and everything, and meets all the IES standards, is actually lower than the Stafford County lighting ordinance. So any waiver that Mr. Bagby referenced would be to ask for lower lighting than what's in the Stafford County signage ordinance. So we're not asking for more, we're actually asking for a little bit less. Just clarify.
Any other questions? Okay. Ms. Sellers?
What's the buffering going to be to Cardinal Forest?
Well, that's not a Royal Farms question, but Steve, you probably know what the buffer is on that property line over here.
Is this diagram up on the screen? Are you looking at the?
Yes.
We get the computer.
Can you pull up the
There it is.
GP again?
Right. If you,
Okay.
I'm going to say, right where you see the words future connection, that is the beginning of the backside of the Cardinal Forest subdivision. Between that word future connection and Warrenton Road, that's that Truck America stop with fuel and a store, whatever it is. We're required to keep the natural buffer that is currently treed. I think Kathy showed one of the images earlier. We're required under our proffers to keep that buffer along there, and then when we go to develop the back side, to enhance the buffer. So that's where, and so that back corner house on that pie-shaped lot there, just below the words future connection, that house from the fuel canopy is probably 750 to 800 feet away. And then as we develop the rest of the frontage, there'll be a buffer area just adjacent to the Truck America as well.
And it's shown as
Landscape screen.
as a 50-foot buffer on the original GDP.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Right.
At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to address the board on this specific public hearing will have the opportunity to do so. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address. The green light indicates you have 3 minutes, the yellow light 1 minute remaining, and the red light, your time has expired. I don't have any speaker cards, so anyone in the chambers wish to address the board on this public hearing.
Ruth Carloni, Mount Olive Road. Apparently, there's some confusion on my part as far as the being more definitive on what's going to be placed on these parcels. For the gas station, I talked with our fire marshal's office, and I also spoke with several fellows that work in Prince William, and they said, why in the, you know what, would they consider doing away with the proffer that was the basis for approval in the first place? Now, this is kind of hard to follow. Mr. Klebanoff, I go back when I was on the Planning Commission, and this was part of our past here. The perimeter lighting, that was just, Gary brought that up, fortunately, and there's tremendous concerns if these go into the parcels for a hotel or maybe perhaps living quarters. We don't know. We don't have anything definitive here what's coming in. So this is conjecture that these are things that could possibly happen. And that's living quarters, say, over businesses. We don't know. Are there going to be drive-throughs? I don't see anything here limiting having drive-throughs. But for the gas station itself, there's about 10 gas stations along 17, and then from Hartwood Road, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 in Stafford along 17th. Starts with Citgo going on it to Exxon, and there's a couple more. And I just really think that this could be reduced from 16 pumps to 8. You've got to remember that y'all had approved, or another group had approved 741 units plus commercial and business further down Route 17. Now, there's more to say, but the time's going very quickly. But because of the queuing up that's possible with the commercial entities that will be coming in, that really should not be reduced from 180 to 140. You know the problem we have at Southern Gateway, that's more extreme, but it's not a good idea to do that, to reduce it that much. There will be an effect on the surrounding properties. Number 8 said there wouldn't be, but I beg to differ. People, the noises, the lighting, again, back to the lighting, these are things that will affect them. Anyway, number 1, to not reduce it to 140, to reduce the pumps from 16 to 8.
Thanks, Ms. Carlin.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board? Okay, applicant, would you like to rebut the comments, or?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I'm not sure exactly where to start, except that the only issue that is being dealt with this evening, as I think the board recognizes, is the CUP location, and the question about lighting went to that site. The rest of the property has been zoned commercially for a significant period of time, and of course it's governed by your ordinances. With regard to the number of fuel pumps, I really think that's an issue that the user needs to deal with, not the county. As far as the number of gas stations is concerned, I'll make a brief comment on that. I also think that's an issue that is best left to the market. However, I will note that since Sheetz opened on 610, we now have the lowest gas prices in the area. So there is some benefit to having good competition. And it's interesting to watch the cycle of the stations as new and better ones come along, the effect both on presentation and on the cost of gas. So I think that is a good, healthy thing. I'm not exactly sure what else Ms. Carloni asked about, but that's my effort to respond to her comments. And thank you. If there's something you want to redirect me to, I'll attempt to answer that. But I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board in the Hartwood District.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one more question, Ms. Baker, if I
Please.
could ask it, please. These other properties, Ms. Baker, that will come when they lease these other properties, will they have to come back to us for a CUP?
If those are uses that are required a conditional use permit, such as the drive-throughs or.
Okay, but the basic zoning is all set.
Correct.
Okay. Thank
There are, I'll just point out, there are uses specified in proffer number 4 that cannot occur on the entire property.
Okay.
If, yep.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to motion to defer until our next meeting. I haven't had an opportunity to walk this property. I'd feel a lot more comfortable for the residents of Cardinal Forest if I had an opportunity to walk the property and get a bird's eye view of where it's going to be.
Okay, we have a motion for deferral and second by Ms. Sellers. Do we have any discussion?
Just silly,
Mr.
but
Milday?
of course, they really do have, their fried chicken's about as good as Valero's. They have good fried chicken. I go there every chance I get when I'm in Maryland. Yeah, they're all up towards Baltimore in that way, so I can attest to and it is a quality establishment in my mind if you're looking up there with a Wawa or a Sheetz. So.
Well, I'm very familiar with Rural Farms. Being in the business I was in for many, many years, I was very familiar with them. I know they do run a very quality organization, and certainly that's not my question at all. I just want to make sure the residents of Cardinal Forest that I'm satisfied that they're going to be okay.
And a drive-through has to have a
conditional use permit.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'll motion. I think I've already motioned, but the county attorney has said motion to defer both items. which is number 2728.
Okay, seconder is fine with that. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, please cast your votes for the deferral. Tally the votes. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, next, item number 29, utilities. Consider vacating easements on Cornwallis Drive as a part of a sewer maintenance project in the George Washington District.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman,
Smith.
members of the board. My name is Michael Smith. I'm the Director of Utilities. Tonight, as you mentioned, we'll be considering the vacation of an old pump station, access easement, and a line that we will be moving. In order to improve the flow and enhance the capacity of a sewer line, the Utilities is planning to do a maintenance project that will straighten out the line and improve the slope. It's in Blythedale on tax map 54V6145. We've been working with the property owner to obtain the required easement for this work. The property owner has agreed, but he would like to vacate the existing easement once the project is completed, and an easement for an old pump station, force main, and access road that is no longer in use. The Utilities Commission voted 5-0 with one absent to approve this vacation. This is a diagram of the vacation. The blue line is the new easement that we will be obtaining. The green hashed line is the old alignment. The yellow area is the area of the abandoned pump station, force main, and access easement. So the green hash line and the yellow lines will be vacated, and we will not vacate those and record them until we complete the project to ensure that we have the new easement. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Okay, hearing none. And we are the applicant, so we will move to the opening the public hearing. At this time, anyone wishing to address the board on this specific public hearing will have the opportunity to do so. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address. Green light is 3 minutes, yellow light is 1 minute, and the red light indicates your time has expired. I have no speaker cards. Anyone in the chamber wish to address the board on this topic? Okay, hearing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. This is in my district, so I believe I am allowed to offer a motion for R16-51. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, please cast your votes. Tally the votes. That motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay, number 30 is Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities. Authorize the county administrator to execute a deed of easement related to the Civil War Park and execute a grant easement with the Civil War Trust in the Aquia District.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Kathy Volbrecht, the Interim Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities. The Stafford Civil War Park opened in 2013 on 41.2 acres at the Rappahannock Regional Landfill. The park was a result of the partnership among the Board of Supervisors, the City of Fredericksburg, 2 units of the National Guard, and the hard work of Glenn Trimmer of the Friends of Stafford Civil War Sites. The park tells the story of winter encampments and fortifications of units of the Union Army after the December 1862 Battle of Fredericksburg. The National Guard played a major role in the construction of the park. They built the park during a 2-week period during the summer of 2011 and 2012. They completed extensive road and parking facilities for the park, but there were many significant environmental requirements that were outside their scope of work, such as the installation of erosion and sediment control facilities. This was work conducted by Stafford County. The county did secure a commitment for $150,000 from the Commonwealth Transportation Board to reimburse the county for costs it paid to complete the park. The funds were provided to the Civil War Trust for eventual distribution to the county. Before releasing the funds, the Civil War Trust requires that a third-party agency be deeded an easement to ensure that the park is protected in perpetuity. This protection also satisfies the county's obligation to the Friends of the Stafford Civil War Sites, and the Land Trust of Virginia has agreed to act as the third party. So tonight's public hearing serves 2 purposes. Proposed resolution R16-29 would authorize the county administrator to execute a deed of gift of easement with the Land Trust of Virginia for the preservation of the Stafford Civil War Park. And proposed resolution R16-30 would authorize the county administrator to execute the grant agreement with the Civil War Trust for the disbursement of the $150,000 that was allocated by the CTB to offset the expenses that were already paid for by the county for the construction of the park. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions? Okay, Hearing none, we will now open the public hearing. Anyone that wishes to address the board on this topic will have an opportunity to do so. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address. Green light indicates you have 3 minutes, yellow light 1 minute, red light your time has expired. Anyone in the chambers wish to address the board?
Good evening, members of the board. Glenn Trimmer. I live at 65 Marlboro Point Road, and nobody wants this to be approved any more than I do, but I do have a question. I've put my questions in writing. I really just want to focus on one because it's my major concern, is as of yet, even though your board package contains the words in there, the Civil War baseline documentation report was signed by grantor and made available to and signed by the grantee, that's you guys, prior to the donation. That report has not come out yet. And I just want you to know that I think one of the most important parts of this documentation is in fact that report, because that's where all of the historical sites are actually outlined. So I didn't want you to think by reading your report that it had been improved. As a matter of fact, I've been trying to get this report for weeks. The county does not have it. The Land Trust, the Land Trust of Virginia, I've called them twice over a week's period. I've left messages and they never returned it, which makes me a little suspicious. I checked with the Civil War Trust. It took them 2 days to locate it. I got a call tonight at 4 o'clock from Kathy Roberts at the Civil War Trust. It said they had found the report. It was a 20 meg file. She would send it to me to review before the meeting. I can't do that. I would argue that D.P. Newton and I have the best knowledge of anybody of that park. And I'd simply ask for a short deferment. Give us, I'm going to be out of town the rest of this week. Give us 3 weeks total. Let us come back to the board with our comments on that. I'm not saying there's anything nefarious in it at all. But one thing I do wonder is they contracted it out. No one has ever contacted us, asked us for any help, anything. And I don't possibly see how you could really be aware of everything that's in that park without of at least calling us and saying, you know, would you walk the park with us or would you talk to us or something? So I feel very uncomfortable about that. And so that's all I'm asking. It's just a chance to look at it. Again, not nefarious. And again, nobody wants this more than I do. You deserve that money. It should have been yours a long time ago. So I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just want to see what's in that report. It's the most important piece. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Trimmer. Anyone else wish to address the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board in the Quiet District.
I'll move deferral until the first meeting in April.
Second.
Okay, we have a deferral for the first meeting in April and a second by Ms. Mauer. Any discussion on the deferral? Okay, please.
Just the obvious. These two built that park at almost zero expense, if not zero expense to the county. If they need a few more weeks, that's fine by me.
Couldn't agree more. Please cast your votes. Are the votes? Motion passes 7-0. No further business. The meeting is now adjourned.